Chapter 1 Azkaban. The Forbidden Land of Dementors. Please support the new book. Shashasha. The rustling sound of friction kept getting more intense amidst the crashing sounds of waves in the distance. Crack, crack. A strange figure wrapped in tattered black linen, howling fiercely, stretched out a hand covered with scabs, revealing the rotten arms under the black cloth. Chasing the recidivist fleeing frantically in front of him. On the cold blue-black stone road, large areas of ice condensed. Dementors. Jailer of Azkaban. One of the most dangerous magic races in the magic world. However, these did not pose much of an obstacle to the strange snake in front of him, which had a strange potion in its mouth. Hiss. The strange snake, whose scales were constantly changing in color, neighed while shaking its body. Its moving speed did not slow down. However, there were already several hideous scratches on its body along the way. However, such a ferocious injury did not cause it to flinch in the slightest. On top of the potion in the mouth, the fresh soil is still exuding the fragrance after the rain. This is what the adults need. It must be kept intact. Hiss. The strange snake accelerated. Its body resembled white lightning flashing among the rocks, and more Dementors gathered. After various pursuits and interceptions, in a short period of time, the strange snake had more and more scars on its body, and blood flowed out. The bright red blood looked so inconspicuous among the dark rocks. The Dementors behind him were densely packed, with hundreds of them. The strange snake seemed to have seen something, with a hint of surprise in its golden vertical pupils. The body flicked violently, and the body flew out. The next moment, the white snake body covered with scars crossed a boundary. They were two ordinary sickles soaked in rainwater and stuck crosswise on the ground, looking extremely weird. However, at the moment when the strange snake rushed over the scythe, the group of Dementors who were only 2 or 3 meters away from each other seemed to have seen something terrifying. The body floating in the air also hurried to the brakes. Roar. Angry and unwilling howls echoed around Azkaban. This caused the prisoners throughout the prison to tremble in fear. And this scene happened to be seen by the strange snake that was winding its way towards the top of the Azkaban Tower. The situation in Azkaban prison is special. It is blessed with various magics. Not only does it have a huge space inside, but it also has extremely strong isolation magic on the outside. However, at this moment, this layer of isolation magic seemed to have no effect on the strange snake in front of him. While climbing up, through the window, I saw dark and damp cells, as well as the shivering, crazy prisoners in them, and the strange snake's eyes flashed pity and happiness. Shashasha. The body kept climbing up, and all kinds of crazy howls echoed in Azkaban. Let me out. I admit my mistake. I have already admitted my mistake. Damn the Ministry of Magic. The Great Death Eaters will make you pay a heavy price. You can't lock me in. I will definitely get out. Definitely. Ha 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 ha. Honey, what did I hear? Someone actually said he wanted to go out. He is so cute. Dementors. What happened to those Dementors? Damn it. Who is stimulating those disgusting guys? Covered with blood and dirt, the rain was carrying a cold wind. It was biting cold, and the stone bed was as hard as iron. And the chain connected to the stone lock on the wall, completely binding the prisoner in the cell. That's not just a chain. It's also a table where the Dementors need to use when eating to prevent food from escaping. The strange snake didn't see this. It had been going back and forth like this at least 100 times over the years. The guests in these cells are no longer the same group of people as before. If we say that originally, it would have taken pity on these people and helped them bring back some fresh gadgets from outside. Now it is already numb. No matter what happens, as long as nothing happens to the adults, it doesn't matter to these people. On top of the potion in its mouth, the soil fell a little due to the fierce escape just now, and a scent of medicine began to spread, making the strange snake tense up instantly. The climbing speed couldn't help but become a little faster. The heavy rain washed away the Tower of Azkaban, and the prisoners and the surrounding Dementors were crying and howling. Combined with the pale thunder that came from time to time, the strange snake at this moment was like Prometheus stealing fire. 1 floor, 2 floors, 5 floors. More than a dozen floors were climbed. We arrived at the top level of Azkaban, and a platform protruding outside the high platform. A Dementor, who seemed to be taller in stature and exuded a stronger aura of terror, stood quietly here. It's not like those Dementors before, shouting and killing all the strange snakes. However, it is also very good, blocking the window in front of you. The strange snake was not surprised by this. The flashing light in the golden vertical pupils showed that the injuries on his body would never be forgotten like this. Dementor. In the cold silence, the strange snake slowly opened its mouth. The potion was fully revealed, and it was a flower emitting bursts of purple light. High in flowers, an extremely rare and precious magic potion that lives in deep mountains and old forests. On average, one plant costs more than 3,000 gold galleons, and it is still expensive but not marketable. The Dementor's corrupted skeleton head lowered its head slightly, and pretended to look at it for a while. Seeing the murderous intent in the eyes of the strange snake in front of him gradually emerge, he then moved away from his body. The window, covered with a layer of frost, slowly opened. The strange snake once again held the Hain curtain flower in its mouth. "Get through the window in front of you and just come in." The warm medicinal fragrance that came towards him made him relax completely, and his body covered with scars and bleeding unconsciously lay on the soft carpet. The eyelids slowly began to fight. There was a sound of footsteps. In the warm light and shadow, a familiar figure wearing the latest nightgown from Madame Malkin's clothing store this year walked over, accompanied by the other party's voice with obvious anger. "Elizabeth, your injury is more serious than last time. It seems that you need to show these dirty things how to be a qualified watchdog in front of me." Chapter 2 More hateful than the Dark Lord. Romon Goldstein Kowalski new book begging for date to Elizabeth. Your injury is more serious than last time. It seems that you need to show these dirty things how to be a qualified watchdog in front of me. Hiss. The man's voice was obviously angry, causing the Dementor outside the window to tremble. The figure flashed and he simply fled from here. Looking at the empty windowsill, a cold flash flashed in Roman's eyes. Just when he was about to repair these disgusting things that didn't know how to live or die, just like he did 13 years ago when he was just imprisoned, there was a cold and soft touch next to his feet. Hiss. The strange snake named Elizabeth slowly opened her mouth, revealing the Hain's curtain flower that she had preserved very well inside. There was a look of anticipation in a pair of snake eyes. The coldness on Roman's face melted, and he carefully touched the other person's head and took the potion over. After observing it, he nodded. "No problem. You kept them very well. Since you don't want me to deal with them, that's fine. Once this bottle of potion is successfully made, you will teach them a lesson yourself." Hearing this, Elizabeth was as happy as a child. Wander around in the lavishly appointed penthouse of Azkaban. Romon laughed and cursed, and after applying the recovery potion on the other party, he got into a medicine room next to him and got busy. Thickened blood of mature vela, dried dragon heart tissue ground into ash, painstaking grass juice, things that in the eyes of the outside world could not even be used as potion ingredients. But at this moment, no one could have imagined that they would exist in the apothecary room in a place like Azkaban, and were taken out by Romon. Pungent smells, accompanied by high temperature and cooking, as well as the addition of ingredients at the right time, are constantly changing and twisting in the air. 13 years ago, he was Romon Goldstein Kowalski, one of the most outstanding students at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In just a few days, he went from a 17-year-old sixth-year wizard to a person who caused shock to the entire wizarding world, even worse than the existence of Voldemort. Tom Riddle, sentenced to 480 years in prison by the British Ministry of Magic. He became the first prisoner to enter Azkaban at the age of 17. The youngest prisoner with the longest sentence. Although he relied on his own abilities, he could live quite happily in Azkaban, known as the Wizard's Hell. But Romon looked at the bubbling crucible in front of him, with a hint of coldness in his eyes. He started to want to go out. London, England. Ministry of Magic. In the minister's office, Cornelius Fudge looked at the most famous white wizard in the wizarding world, the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Albus Dumbledore, with a constipated look on his face. The eyes, like toads, almost burst out of their sockets in anger because of Dumbledore's intention. "Water. Dumbledore, do you know what you are talking about? Do you know how much wrong the so-called poor boy you mentioned has committed? It is no exaggeration to say that if you hadn't tried your best to stop him, there wouldn't have been a wizard in the entire European wizarding world who didn't want to kill that guy. Everyone." "Did you hear clearly? Everyone wanted to kill him back then." Fudge looked like he was roaring as if he had been greatly stimulated. Dumbledore seemed to have already expected this reaction. He stroked his beard, which shone with silver light under the light, and stared at the person in front of him. A pair of eyes that are calm but seem to be able to see through everything. "I admit that the incident was too horrific. Not only did it affect a wide range of people, but its influence was extremely bad." Fudge thought Dumbledore had given up and was about to breathe a sigh of relief. But he was immediately choked by Dumbledore's next words. "But, Mr. Minister, maybe others are qualified to say that about the child Romon. At least you, Connery Fudge, you might as well ask Merlin from the bottom of your heart. Were you really there in that disaster? Did you suffer any losses?" Fudge's face was livid, but Dumbledore didn't give him any face. Without mercy, he directly removed the opponent's fig leaf. "Fudge, that young lady from the Smith family didn't look down on you at all at that time." Fudge was furious. "FK. Dumbledore, what are you talking about? We really love each other. The entire wizarding world knows it." However, the Minister of Magic, who was considered a big figure in the wizarding world, could not pose any threat at all in front of Dumbledore, the big boss. Waves of chuckles came from Dumbledore's mouth, with an inexplicable, calming sound that echoed in the office. "Ha ha, don't get excited, Fudge. You know, I'm not here to quarrel. On the contrary, I'm helping you now. Let's not talk about how you got your position, but there is one thing that I think you can't deny. There are quite a few people staring at it. I think you know this, old man." Fudge finally fell silent. There was an eerie silence in the office for a while. Fudge's voice finally sounded again. "Professor Dumbledore, you should also know that what a brat committed back then was 100 times more serious than Voldemort in terms of impact. If it weren't for you, he wouldn't even have the chance to be imprisoned in Azkaban. Now you ask me to let him out. With all due respect, Professor Dumbledore, you may not have enough face. I may have directly offended the entire British wizarding community because of this incident. When the time comes, I won't be able to keep my position. However, Dumbledore smiled mysteriously. I am convinced in my heart that today's goal has been at least half achieved at this moment. He chuckled lightly, took out the letter from his arms, and handed it to the other party. Fudge looked unhappy, but still took it, muttering dissatisfiedly, Professor Dumbledore, all of this is in vain. I know that brat's godfather is Master Newt, but even with this... Huh? Fudge's eyes suddenly widened and he looked at the big red mark on the letterhead and the rigorously worded words at the beginning in disbelief. American Ministry of Magic. Chapter 3 Letter of Advice from the United States Ministry of Magic. New book begging for data. Dear British Minister for Magic, Cornelius Fudge. We have been opposed to the outcome of your Ministry of Magic's treatment of our country's outstanding wizard Mr. Romon back then. But obviously, it is unfair for your country to make a fuss about this incident, which did not cause much actual damage. The shameless detention of Mr. Romon Goldstein Kowalski for 13 years is a serious provocation to the dignity of the United States Ministry of Magic, and we can no longer tolerate it. Here, on behalf of the United States Department of Magic, I would like to officially announce that this written submission represents our ultimatum. Immediately release Mr. Romon Goldstein Kowalski, a subordinate of the United States Ministry of Magic and the best potion master of this century, and be sure to ensure all his legal and reasonable activities in your jurisdiction. We were unable to receive a satisfactory reply within 7 days of the letter being delivered. I am sorry to inform you, Minister Connery, that you will be honored to add to your resume in office and set off the outstanding deeds of the war between the wizarding world between Britain and the United States. May Merlin's wisdom come to you. Donald. Understand. Waterfur? This is impossible. After reading the contents of the letter, a thin layer of sweat broke out on Fudge's forehead. His face was pale and his eyes were wide open, staring at Dumbledore in disbelief at the old god in front of him. Gritting teeth. This is absolutely impossible. That brat. No. Even if you include the family behind him and Newt's commander, there is absolutely no way you can let the American Ministry of Magic stand up for them. This is impossible. Listening to the other party's hoarse roar, Dumbledore just shook his head gently. There was a hint of memory in his eyes, as if he was reminiscing about something in the past. Sigh. Fudge, you know that even I can't fake the letter markings of the American Ministry of Magic. They are even better at this than we are. To a certain extent, Fudge, you really don't understand what the child Romon actually represents. What you see in front of you is the fact. If you continue to imprison him, the United States Ministry of Magic will definitely go to war over it. Fudge, holding the letter in his hand with a tangled expression, he paced back and forth in the office. Today Dumbledore really brought him a big problem that really put him in a dilemma. By releasing Romon, he will definitely offend the entire British wizarding community, and even the entire European wizarding community, but not releasing Romon caused a war in the wizarding world during his tenure. Then he is even cooler. Finally, after walking around for who knows how many times, when even Dumbledore was about to finish the snacks on his desk, Fudge paused. Gritting his teeth, he stared at each other. Dumbledore, why? I need to know why the American wizarding community would send me such a strong threat to declare war for such a brat. I need to know the reason. Seeing that the situation is almost over, Dumbledore also smiled slightly, and under the gaze of the other party, he took out a crystal amethyst potion bottle the size of an egg from his arms. Placed in front of Fudge. Look at it, how beautiful it is. Even Severus has to praise it. It is the work of our Mr. Romon. From the notes he left at home, we know that the name of this potion is Merlin's Second Visit at Midnight. Fudge, who was still immersed in this beauty, couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth after hearing the name. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and squeezed out a sentence. It's indeed his style. But what effect does this potion have? Dumbledore smiled slightly, looked at the potion bottle, his eyes flickered, and murmured, just like its name. The second chance Merlin gives to wizards. Fudge. How many squibs are there in the British wizarding world? When the word squib came out of Dumbledore's mouth, Fudge was stunned for a moment, and then his expression changed drastically. You mean? Dumbledore nodded, pointed at the potion bottle in front of him, and murmured, this potion can give squibs a second chance, allowing them to reignite a surge of magic and become a true wizard. Although a person only has one chance, but, Fudge, you must understand now why the United States will the magic world be so excited. Fudge nodded, took a breath, and then sat down on the chair weakly. The brain is a little blank. Just like the birth of the United States, the birth of the American wizarding world was naturally born out of Europe. Some pure-blood families who didn't get along well moved to the United States. It gradually developed to what it is today. In the American wizarding world, the number of squibs in wizard families is much higher than here. No wonder, if the formula and preparation method of this potion are obtained, the power of the entire American wizarding world will at least double. Dumbledore nodded. Fudge gritted his teeth and struggled for a long time before finally speaking again. I can let him be released from prison early, but, Dumbledore, one thing I want to make clear is that the United States Ministry of Magic calls it, let us ensure the safety of that brat Romon. Fudge shook his head, We can't do it. There are more people who want to kill him than there are Aurors in the British Ministry of Magic. And to put it bluntly, even Aurors don't have no one who wants to kill him. Dumbledore coughed dryly and nodded. Don't worry, I will communicate this with the other side. You know, they are very realistic. They only want the formula of the potion. As for Romon's safety, I will make arrangements for him. Just as the two of them were rushing towards Azkaban from the British Ministry of Magic. Meanwhile, Azkaban, a bang sound, like the sound of a red wine cork being opened, came from the potion bottle in Romon's hand. In the dark pharmacy room, Romon and the strange snake Elizabeth at his feet were looking at the pharmacy bottles in front of them with fascination. It was like a white storm swirling in the potion bottle, crystal clear and shining slightly. Romon smelled the smell of the potion, and it was exactly the same as the situation simulated in his mind. Elizabeth, I think we really succeeded this time. Chapter 4: The Science of Evolution and Transformation of Magical Creatures. New book begging for data. Elizabeth, I think we really succeeded this time. When he said this sentence, even Romon himself felt as absurd as falling into a dream. If what he is currently researching is known to the outside world, he will definitely add the titles of madman and idiot to his original notoriety. However, only Romon himself knows that the path he is taking is not wrong at all. It's just full of ups and downs. However, this is the path in life that he has truly determined after years of study and pursuit since his soul traveled to this wizarding world. Magical creatures evolve and transform. Life is short. Even the original Dark Lord Grindelwald, or today's Voldemort and Dumbledore, in Romon's eyes, are still small beings imprisoned in this world. Maybe at some levels, it exceeds that of ordinary people, but they themselves are still in the human category. And Romon, now that he has come to this magical world, Romon will not be willing to accept it if he cannot aspire to the highest level. Hiss. Elizabeth rubbed Romon's feet excitedly, and the touch of the snake's body, which was as cold as white jade, brought Romon back to his senses. He lowered his body and touched the other person's head, with the same expectation in his eyes. Elizabeth, are you ready? Completely liberate the foundation of transformation over the years and become a unique advanced magical creature in the magical world. Elizabeth nodded excitedly. It can't wait any longer. Not only as an experimental subject, to verify the conjecture and research of the Master Romon, it is also a biological instinct to become stronger. Finally, Romon checked Elizabeth's condition and confirmed that there was nothing wrong with her. He slowly poured the potion he named, Antia's Creator, from the bottle into Elizabeth's mouth. There was a crash. A violent gust of wind exploded from Elizabeth's body. Amidst the clicks that sounded like chains being untied, Romon, who was pushed to the wall, saw with excitement that the snake scales on the opponent's body were rapidly hardening and then falling off. Waves of sobs came from Elizabeth's mouth as she twisted in pain. Then, there was a sound that made Romon so excited that he almost bit his tongue. "Our master, it hurts." Ignoring the shameful nature of the words, when this distinctly female human voice came out of Elizabeth's mouth, Elizabeth froze in shock, even though she was in pain. I can speak now, Master, Romon was equally excited. However, when he saw Elizabeth, whose body was surging with energy and her snake body was rapidly expanding, his expression changed. He hurriedly waved his hand, and a burst of magic power surged out. There was a crash and the window was instantly broken open. "Quick, Elizabeth, get out quickly. This place cannot bear your next transformation." Elizabeth also came to her senses in an instant, and the next moment it turned into a white gust of wind, setting off a gust of wind in Romon's cell. In an instant, the howling wind sounded outside the window. When Romon came to the window a little embarrassed, he saw a scene that made him extremely excited. "Roar. You bastards, I've been planning to tear you apart for a long time." At this moment, Elizabeth's body has actually expanded to 10 or 20 meters long, like a small train. The white snake scales all over its body had transformed, and a layer of pure white bird feathers had actually grown. When Romon saw it, a pair of wings spread out from behind with a clatter. And at the moment when Elizabeth looked at the swarming Dementors, she let out a roar. The situation suddenly changed. A terrifying gust of wind, carrying bursts of black and red thunder, suddenly erupted from her mouth. Instantly hit the dozen Dementors that rushed towards him. The sharp and shrill screams of the Dementors instantly rang out over Azkaban, alarming the other Dementors around them. It also instantly caused the wizard prisoners in the prison to look out in horror. Watershit! Who is this kind of magic wave? Who is attacking Azkaban? It's Voldemort. Our great demon lord is back. Ha ha ha. Our master is here to save us. Oh my god, there are those damn Dementors everywhere. They are all converging over there. Who is it? Is it really Voldemort? Among those extremely vicious dark wizards, there were many people with powerful magic powers, but even they felt their souls trembling violently after feeling this powerful aura. In a cell on the 10th floor of Azkaban, a crazy-looking woman with an afro on her head showed surprise in her eyes after feeling the magical atmosphere outside the cell. "It's my master who's back. It's Voldemort who's back." In another cell, a big black dog lay sleeping in the cell. After feeling the terrifying magical atmosphere outside the prison, the big black dog got up. A shocking thing happened. The big black dog slowly changed and turned into a human! Damn it, Isn't the Voldemort dead? Who else can have such a powerful magic wave and directly attack Azkaban? At the same time, Dumbledore and Fudge came to the vicinity of Azkaban's island through operation. When they saw the situation on the island, their expressions changed instantly. Watershit, someone is attacking Azkaban? Fudge's voice became shrill at this moment. And just when he was about to call the headquarters error, but he was stopped in time by Dumbledore. Don't panic, Fudge. Look. There are no traces of fighting here. It looks like a magical creature that accidentally entered. What kind of Dementors are there? You don't have to worry here. What we should pay more attention to now is Romon Sir's safety, you know. Fudge glanced in shock at the huge thing stirring up the storm in the sky above Azkaban. Then he nodded. If there is no one to rob the prison, then he should be more concerned about the potion's genius who may bring him war. The two of them hurriedly entered the prison. There was filth and cold-smelling excrement everywhere, making both of them frown involuntarily. The dark wizards who had been kissed by Dementors recently were trembling like dead dogs. Fudge couldn't help but feel a little worried. Is that brat Romon going crazy after being tortured by Dementors? Chapter 5. In fact, I also plan to go out today. New book begging for data. When I think about those rebellious beasts like Dementors, it is very likely that they will ignore the original request of the Ministry of Magic. Use cruel methods on Romon who cannot be tortured. Fudge couldn't help but go up the stairs a little faster. Along the way, he directly filtered out the curses from some of the dark wizards who recognized his identity. All he could think about was Romon Goldstein Kowalski, who represented his future minister in a black hat. Dumbledore also had the same worries. Over the years, he had wanted to find opportunities to see Romon countless times. However, the wizards who were so annoyed by Romon kept staring at him. People from pureblood families often made trouble for him at school board meetings. Even if he has a certain degree of confidence in Romon, the godson of his old friend. At this moment, as he looked from floor to floor, the dark wizards and even Death Eaters who were in more miserable conditions than the last made him inevitably feel anxious. My Lord Merlin, I hope that child Romon hasn't been tortured crazy by these damn Dementors. The two people had the same idea. However, when they arrived at the top floor of Azkaban where Romon was imprisoned, as soon as he entered, he was shocked and speechless by the scene in front of him. The warm candlelight was beating gently, and the floor was a burgundy carpet. Around a long corridor, if it weren't for the shackles and cages that were opened one by one, who would have thought that this was Azkaban? That nightmare hell in the hearts of countless wizards. Is this ... the latest item from Madame Malkin's clothing store last month? Professor Dumbledore. Fudge's face was livid, and he looked at Dumbledore beside him with eyes full of anger. At this moment, in their long corridor, from where they came up, to the end, Romon was locked up, but the iron door was an open cell door. The left and right sides are full of things that are popular in the wizarding world now and in the past. Nimbus 2000 flying broomstick, Cordiafire dragon teeth wizard chess. There are also various magical trinkets, as well as a large number of exquisite clothes from Madame Malkin. However, Dumbledore also looked confused after seeing this scene. Facing the angry Fudge, he didn't know what to say at this moment. After a while, he touched his beard. Fudge, whether you believe it or not, I still have to say that these things are really not sent by me, and you know, I don't have the time to come here so many times with so many things. It is definitely not a small project. Fudge thought for a while, snorted coldly, said nothing, and walked towards the end of the corridor with full of doubts. Just walked to the door. I was so angry at the interior decoration that I didn't faint. A soft, large bed that looked like it had a mole mattress, a high-end oak desk, and 7 or 8 bookshelves filled to the brim with books. The room looked messier, as if something had happened. Romon himself is missing, but there were scattered pieces of paper everywhere. Dumbledore walked in and picked up a piece of paper on the ground. What was recorded on it made even a top wizard like him confused. What magic cells? What magic gene rewriting? What reactions? When he saw the other things scattered on the ground, Dumbledore was even more shocked and speechless by the large amount of information about various magical creatures recorded on them. Newt, what on earth did you instill in this child Romon? At this moment, Fudge on the other side also discovered something extraordinary. Standing in front of a row of bookshelves. Dumbledore, I don't believe that you are completely unaware of everything here. In addition to so many potions and alchemy books, why are there so many books about the Mole world here? Fudge looked angry. However, just as he finished speaking, there was a sound of footsteps, and Romon's voice came from the pharmacy room nearby. Headmaster Dumbledore, and Minister Fudge, what a surprise. I didn't expect you to come. Dumbledore looked at Romon, who had put on a clean and crisp suit. His hair was combed meticulously, and he was wearing a pair of shiny leather shoes. His eyes were in a trance for a while. It seemed that he couldn't help but think of the talented boy who dominated Hogwarts with his shining posture time and time again. Even after being imprisoned in this wizard hell for 13 years, the other party's appearance did not seem to have changed much. His eyes are still bright and his smile has become calm and confident. Only, Mr. Romon, it looks like you are preparing to take a long trip. Fudge had silently taken out his wand, but considering Romon's situation, he didn't do it. A pair of eyes looked at Dumbledore aside. Okay Romon, Minister Fudge has agreed to release you, so don't make any unnecessary moves. Hearing this, Romon couldn't help but glance at Minister Fudge standing aside in surprise. Fortunately, after Dumbledore took out his bottle of potion and explained, he nodded suddenly. It's really hard for you to find this thing among my pile of useless scraps. When listening to Romon, it turned out that he had a magic potion that was so precious that it could even change the pattern of the wizarding world. When called waste, Fudge on the side couldn't help but bite his tongue. Okay, Mr. Romon, I can let you out, but I also want to make things clear to you. We are not responsible for your safety. If you run around outside by yourself, or are encountered by Death Eaters. Romon curled his lips and said, as expected of you, Mr. Minister. Even before this happened, you have already classified the person who attacked me as a Death Eater. Ha ha. Fudge said nothing and stared at Romon, then nodded in understanding. Then he snorted coldly and glanced around. Before you leave here, you'd better restore this place to its original appearance. Romon nodded and was about to say something when suddenly, bursts of piercing screams sounded fiercely outside again. Even with the isolation of the magic barrier, several people frowned instantly. Damn, what kind of magical creature is this? It looks like a bird and snake, but Fudge stood at the window and watched as his wings spread out. With a roar, he could trigger a violent tornado and stare up the Dementors, leaving Elizabeth crying for her father and mother. His expression was full of worry and confusion. At this time, Romon's voice suddenly came from behind him. Okay, Elizabeth, let them go. We have to leave this hellish place. Chapter 6 The Farewell Prisoner of Azkaban. New book. Begging for data. The sky above Azkaban. A tornado that was hundreds of meters high roared wildly. Bursts of red and black thunder with tearing sounds raged around the storm. And in the center of this terrifying eye of a storm, Elizabeth spreads her wings and has pure white feathers all over her body. She looks like the Quetzalcoatl in Mayan mythology and legend, Kukulkan. The Quetzalcoatl who can control thunder and storms. And around it, just before today, were the Dementors who are chasing it again and again. In a real sense, it became the fish on the chopping board. Their special, immortal ability not only failed to bring them any actual strengthening at this moment, but instead allowed them to survive the terrible storm for a longer period of time, bearing the pain of tearing and thundering. The wind howled, and the thunder was deafening. However, at this moment, these voices were no match for the words Romon blurted out. Dumbledore was holding a volume of Romon's notes on magical creatures in his hand. Like Fudge, who was standing at the window, he seemed to have seen something incredible, just stared at Romon blankly. And that's about it. The roar of the storm outside suddenly began to subside. Just when Fudge turned to look out the windows, the window was suddenly occupied by a huge and ferocious snake head. Those vertical pupils filled with ice coldness, as well as the chilling magic fluctuations emanating from his body. Even though Fudge was the Minister of Magic, the hand holding the wand started to tremble violently. Water. His face was pale, and while his body was trembling, he wanted to say something. But he couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time, just standing by the window like a puppet. Dumbledore on the side was in a better situation. But even he couldn't help but take a deep breath when he looked at the huge and terrifying magical creature that looked like a bird and snake outside the window. Okay, this is Principal Dumbledore, and this is Minister Fudge, the person who locked me up here. At this time, Romon's voice sounded again. Turning around to look, he saw the terrifying Elizabeth outside the window shrank quickly and miraculously, and finally transformed into the size of a normal white snake and flew into the house. After hearing Romon's words, he looked at Fudge with an obviously unkind look. Dumbledore looked at Elizabeth, who had shrunk in front of her, spread her wings beside Romon, and fluttered gently, like a white ribbon in the air. He lowered his head and looked at a draft of notes in his hand. Conjectures about bird and snake magic genes and transformation magic factors. In this world, there exists a magical creature called the bird snake, which is a combination of a snake and a bird. Moreover, it can also freely change the size of its body. Dumbledore took a deep breath, and when he looked at Romon, his eyes flickered, not knowing what he was thinking. Although the situation is very different from what we imagined, but I am relieved to see that you are okay, Romon. I think Newt can finally give his messenger bird a rest. At the end, Dumbledore chuckled. After relaxing the atmosphere of the scene, Romon also shrugged and winked at Elizabeth, who was flying around Fudge with a threatening look on her face. The latter immediately returned to his side honestly. Shrunken down to the size of a bracelet, it wraps around Romon's wrist. So, I'd like to know if we can leave? Fudge's face didn't look good, but it was hard to say anything at the moment. After saying you need to clean up here first, he walked straight outside. Glancing at Fudge's leaving figure, Dumbledore's hand flashed with light, and a suitcase that looked a little older appeared in his hand. Looking at the suitcase, Romon's eyes couldn't help but move. Ha, it can be seen that Newt cares about you very much. And 13 years of imprisonment not only did not make you depressed, but also allowed you to calm down and stick to your own path in a place like this. Romon, you will definitely be a great wizard with a great reputation in the future. Dumbledore looked solemn, and in his capacity, he said such words to a junior. It has fully demonstrated his importance and recognition of Romon. However, in response to this, Romon took the space-folding box from his godfather Newt Scamander very naturally and curled his lips speechlessly. Headmaster Dumbledore, if you want to be famous, I think there is no one in the entire wizarding world who is more famous than I am now. Although I am imprisoned here, I have not cut off information exchanges with the outside world. Now, the name Romon Goldstein Kowalski, it is not an exaggeration to say that it is a household name, right? Romon paused, then seemed to think of something, and smiled to himself. The Death Eaters can be left alone for now. Romon must die. Ha, what an interesting slogan. Dumbledore was speechless and walked out of Azkaban silently. After Romon packed up all his things, he also walked out of Azkaban. As if for a walk, the sound of shiny leather shoes hitting the floor of Azkaban's prison immediately attracted the attention of the Death Eaters and wizards imprisoned around them. Damn, this guy, how could you be let out? Fudge. You damn bastard. I'll kill you, Romon Goldstein Kowalski. I'll kill you. You killed my sister. You killed my sister. Among the prisoners who were as filthy as mad dogs, Romon silently came to a black dog. Taking off the hat on his head, Romon raised the corner of his mouth and looked at Sirius, who had released the animagus. Classmate Black, I really didn't expect that it would be 13 years since the trial of me by the god of spring, and it would be 13 years since we met again. What's even more incredible is that the young master of the Black family who followed classmate James Potter, turned out to be a prisoner. Hearing the familiar name from Romon's mouth, Sirius, who was obviously mentally disturbed by the Dementors' hospitality, grabbed the prison door in excitement. I didn't kill James. I didn't betray them. Romon raised his eyebrows and shrugged. When did I say that you betrayed them? Now it was Sirius' turn to be stunned. However, Romon had no intention of continuing the conversation and glanced at the prison not far away from Sirius, where another Black was being held. By some mistake, I made Lily and James Potter a success, but apart from them, I made a lot of people better. Upon hearing this, Sirius immediately felt as if his tail had been stepped on, and he looked furious. Frantically, he wanted to reach out and catch Romon. Damn it! I'm going to kill you. Romon Goldstein Kowalski. I'm definitely going to kill you. Ha. Chapter 7 Get Out of Prison. Beautiful Dementor, new book requesting data. After all, some people have even been neighbors here with me for 13 years, so some reluctance is inevitable. Seeing a man in a straight suit walking out of the gate of Azkaban, he was able to say such words shamelessly even in the face of abuse that could not be blocked by soundproofing magic. Fudge gritted his teeth but still didn't say anything. Looking at Dumbledore aside. Professor Dumbledore, I still say what I said. We have released him, but the British Ministry of Magic is not responsible for his safety. If the American Ministry of Magic is worried, it would be better to send him back as soon as possible. Dumbledore bowed slightly in thanks. However, just as the two were preparing to take Romon away from the island, amidst the bursts of crashing sounds, and as the air cooled down instantly, the heads of several people were instantly covered in darkness. As soon as he raised his head, Fudge's expression suddenly changed. He took out his wand from his arms, and a little white light lit up the tip of the wand. This is the performance of using the God-calling guard. What's going on? What are you going to do? This prisoner has been pardoned. Fudge shouted a warning. However, the surrounding Dementors not only showed no intention of dispersing, but instead gathered more and more. Fortunately, they seemed to be worried about something. They only surrounded a few people, but they were always controlled within a very safe range. Dumbledore's eyes swept over these Dementors, and after a brief consideration, he couldn't help but look at Romon beside him. When he looked at it, he instantly saw Romon's slightly guilty expression. Mr. Romon, so in addition to the good neighbors who are imprisoned in Azkaban and can't bear to leave you, do these Dementors who serve here also have a deep relationship with you? Romon coughed twice and couldn't help but look away. Maybe. 13 years of getting along is really a long time. Professor Dumbledore, you know, memories are the most tormenting of each other, so the long-term pain is not as good as the short-term pain. I think we are still leave quickly. With that said, he stepped forward to leave. However, this simple movement of taking a step instantly aroused the alarm of the entire Dementor race, and one by one they tightened their already tight surroundings again. At this time, Dumbledore and the two were still unclear about what was going on. Fudge looked gloomy. Mr. Romon, I think in your current situation, it's better not to do anything drastic. After all, there are so many Dementors, and it's difficult for Dumbledore and I to protect you. Also, if you don't want this matter to become a big deal, it's best not to let your strange magical creature take action. Romon sighed helplessly and looked at Dumbledore beside him. Seeing that the latter didn't speak, and knowing that the other party couldn't help him through this difficulty, he had no choice but to open his suitcase in front of the two of them and fumble around inside. Take out a basketball-sized sealed glass bottle. When they saw the contents of the glass bottle, the entire group of Dementors couldn't help but feel restless. Even Dumbledore and Fudge couldn't help but widen their eyes and gasp. Water? Is this a Dementor? Romon didn't say anything, and opened the bottle cap made of special materials in front of the two of them. Wow! In an instant, the Dementors who were compressed and imprisoned inside rushed outside. Even ignoring the same kind around them, They just flew away towards the distance of Azkaban. At this moment, Fudge and the two of them were shocked by a ghost like a Dementor. I felt an emotion called fear. What exactly did you do to it? Fudge held back his face and still couldn't help asking. Romon said nothing, looking at the Dementors who still refused to leave. He finally sighed. Once again, he took out 2 jars containing Dementors from the suitcase. After releasing the Dementors inside one after another, Romon looked at these scattered guys who were called the ugliest dark creatures by the wizarding world, but his eyes were full of pity. I'm the only one in the whole world who understands your beauty. Why are you so afraid of me? Immortal, feeding on souls, and able to give birth naturally. How can this not be called beauty? The sky above the head no longer had the presence of the Dementors, and became grey again. Romon smacked his mouth regretfully, and just turned his head, but saw Dumbledore's majestic eyes staring at him. Obviously, this is the greatest Mr. White Wizard today. From Romon, he saw something that made him uneasy. To this, Romon just smiled back. After this incident, Fudge didn't want to stay here for a second. He hurriedly emphasized some things with Dumbledore again and immediately returned to the Ministry of Magic. It is foreseeable that he will face a lot of troubles next. Even with a threat from the US Ministry of Magic as an excuse, releasing Romon, a guy whose hazard factor is more terrifying than Voldemort, will definitely make him face a lot of troubles. But fortunately, these things will not affect his position as minister. Your wand has been destroyed by the Ministry of Magic, and you are the most outstanding student in the school that year. You also know some basic common sense. Although I don't know why you don't want to go back to the American wizarding world, it's your freedom to stay here, but, as Fudge said, Mr. Romon, we are in a lot of trouble now, so, you can't expect me to bring you out of it again. On top of a magic carriage pulled by the Thestrals, Dumbledore kept nagging in Romon's ear, but Romon kept looking at the Thestral who was pulling him. To be honest, he was equally curious about this magical creature. Although there is no special ability, the characteristic that only those who have experienced death can see has successfully aroused some curiosity of Romon. He looked at the familiar group of castles that appeared behind the thick fog that dispersed in the dark night, and the corner of his mouth curled up. So, Headmaster Dumbledore, what are your plans for bringing me to Hogwarts? Dumbledore took a deep look at Romon, focused on Elizabeth on his wrist for a while, and said quietly, for now, Hogwarts is definitely the safest place in the British wizarding world for you, and letting you stay in Hogwarts is also the meaning of your godfather and parents. Having said that, Dumbledore had a smile on his face, and held out a hand to Romon. So, Mr. Romon, who is known as the best potions wizard in the American wizarding world, is willing to be my professor of potions at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Chapter 8 Returning to Hogwarts. Severus, why are you keeping your head down? New book begging for data. The Yaki carriage slowly stopped in front of the gate of the castle. Looking at the several figures standing at the door, the corners of Romon's mouth could not help but curl up slightly, and he opened his arms happily towards one of them. Wow! Professor McGonagall, you were able to welcome me here. To be honest, I never thought of this. Professor McGonagall was caught off guard and was hugged by Romon. She, who was already rigid, was taken aback by Romon's bold move and pushed him away hastily, with an even stiffer expression on her face. Then I might really disappoint you, Mr. Romon. Actually, I am not waiting for you, but for Principal Dumbledore, who did not even consult us when we did such a big thing. Albus, you are too impulsive. How big of a mistake has Romon made? Don't you think? Do you know? Romon's smile remained undiminished, and he was not annoyed by being scolded so much by the other party. He stood aside and watched the good show with his chest folded. While Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall were arguing about Romon's situation, Romon's eyes suddenly fixed on the few people at the door. His eyes flickered slightly, but when the latter noticed Romon's gaze, he instinctively lowered his head. Classmate Severus, we were such good friends back then. Now that you have come to greet me, why do you have to lower your head again? This is really sad. Looking at Romon, who walked in front of him with a smile on his face, Severus Snape finally raised his head with difficulty and looked at the smiling face. But his mind couldn't help but think of the secret that no one in the wizarding world knew except Romon and him. Romon didn't expect you to be so young. Snape's voice was difficult, and his expression was full of apprehension, and shame. As soon as he said a word, he was ready to bow his head again. If the students at Hogwarts who had attended his potions class saw him like this, they would definitely be shocked by Snape's appearance at this moment and exclaim, is this person really Professor Snape? That old bat professor with a sullen face every day and always speaking with his trademark cadence? At this moment, the other party's appearance didn't look like some serious potions professor, rather like a poor student facing a bully. Hearing the other party's words, Romon paused for a moment with a smile, and then returned to normal, with one hand directly and casually placed on the other party's shoulder. 13 years is really not a short time, but I really didn't expect that 13 years would not only fail to make you more dazzling, but make you even less liked by girls. Yes, if I guessed correctly. Snape, your oily and shiny long hair helped you fend off a lot of girls, didn't you? Just like Lily. The name Lily was mentioned, and Romon, the last person he didn't want to face, said it himself. Finally, At this moment Snape couldn't take it anymore, and pushed Romon away roughly. Under the gaze of everyone, he hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and left a sentence, walking towards the school. There are still some materials in my pharmacy that need to be processed. Seeing Snape running away, Romon smiled slightly and shrugged his shoulders at everyone. Sure enough, 13 years is really a big gap. Professor McGonagall's face didn't look good. Mr. Romon, I advise you to be honest. You know, every second you spend outside of Azkaban is extremely dangerous. Romon smiled and said nothing. Finally, under the guidance of the house elves, Romon finally came to the professor's dormitory he was assigned. It's not very luxurious, but the scenery outside the window is quite good. While you can have a panoramic view of the Hogwarts lake, you can also see part of the Forbidden Forest. Most importantly, I don't know if it was Dumbledore's deliberate arrangement. It was not far from Dumbledore's principal's office, and Romon was the only one in the entire spire. These damn wizards, they dare to neglect you, master. I should just raze this place to the ground. There was no one else, and Elizabeth also flew down from Romon's wrist, speaking in a charming female voice. Romon didn't respond to this, but silently began to tidy up his residence. Without a wand, plus long-term detention in a place with a magical enchantment like Azkaban, the magic power situation in Romon's body is not optimistic. And this is one of the reasons why he made up his mind and even decided to escape from prison. Simply taking things out, the stumbled use of magic power made him unable to even use spells and wandless spells to plan and organize his residence. After tidying up briefly, I looked at the quiet night at Hogwarts. After thinking for a while, Romon finally walked out of here silently, walking along the corridor of memory. Along the way, the figures in the paintings hanging on the corridor, after seeing Romon's face, all seemed to see something incredible. With an exclamation, he hit himself on the spot. It's that beast. Damn it. The Silver Demon King. It's the Silver Demon King. Mom, hurry up and hide. Damn it. What the hell is Dumbledore doing? Why does this guy appear here? Romon turned a deaf ear to these, and his ears were getting calloused after listening too much. Soon, in front of a familiar room full of strange and mixed atmosphere, Romon knocked on the door. Without waiting for a response from inside, he went straight into it. Click. Looking at Snape, who was so frightened that he dropped the potion bottle in his hand on the spot because of his appearance, the corners of Romon's mouth curled up slightly. With a slight movement of the tip of the nose, it was immediately possible to determine what the other party was preparing. Blessing elixir. So even after 13 years, do you still think it was just bad luck? Snape, apart from your image becoming less and less attractive to women, you really haven't changed at all. It's still that trash from back then. No wonder he has such a strong talent for spells and potions, but he still lost to that trash Potter. Snape. If someone said such harsh words to Snape, even for someone like Dumbledore, Snape would have just drawn out his wand. However, in the face of Romon, gritting his teeth in silence for a while, Snape finally asked with a stern face, "What's the matter with you?" Romon directly took out a scroll of parchment from his arms and threw it to the other party. "I want you to prepare 10 copies of the above materials." Snape took the list and frowned instantly. Every material on it was quite rare and precious, which meant he had access to it. However, just as he gritted his teeth and nodded in recognition, Romon in front of him spoke again. "In addition, get me another 100,000 gold galleons." Walter. Chapter 9. Snape, I'll live with you for the rest of my life. In addition, get me another 100,000 gold galleons. Walter. Snape looked up in disbelief, even though he was as calm as he was. At this moment, he couldn't help but wonder if there was something wrong with his ears. However, looking at his arms crossed, with a look of determination on his face, and repeating this request again, Snape was so angry that his face was distorted. He wanted to scold the other party loudly, but he seemed to be worried about disturbing other teachers at Hogwarts in the dark, or some other concerns. He couldn't help but lower his voice. Asked coldly, 100,000 gold galleons? Romon Kowalski, do you think that since you have been imprisoned in Azkaban for more than 10 years, gold galleons have become so cheap in the wizarding world? Stop being stupid. However, facing the furious Snape, Romon slowly put away the smile on his face. Take a step forward, like a dueling bull. More than 10 years, you have the nerve to come up with this number. My dear classmate Severus, do you know how I have spent these 10 years? Azkaban. Haha. I should have gone in to experience what it means. Who are the people in the wizarding hell? Do you know how I lived in Azkaban for more than 10 years? Do you know? Immediately, Snape, who was still aggressive, drooped his head as if he had turned into a frustrated rooster. But I also helped you a lot during this time. I tried my best to get the potions and books you wanted for you. However, Romon sneered, not letting the other party go at all. So just these, let our classmate Severus get rid of all the guilt. Snape. In the end, in the face of such an aggressive Romon, Snape, who already had a fatal grip in his hands, could only succumb. 100,000 galleons is too much, and now all my savings add up to less than 50,000. However, before he finished speaking, he was interrupted unceremoniously by Romon. 100,000 gold galleons, not even a penny less. Snape was out of breath. Romon, you are too strong. This number, do you want me to rob Gringotts? Romon narrowed his eyes slightly, and the curved corner of his mouth made Snape's heart twitch instinctively again. Snape, in 13 years, you have never found a way to come to me, but I know everything about you such as you and our headmaster Dumbledore. What a sad love scene. Instantly, Snape's pupils shrank, and he looked at the determined Romon in front of him in disbelief. In his heart, he wanted to strongly deny that Romon knew his secret. However, Romon knew him too well, and he also knew the brightest star at Hogwarts. He is extremely disdainful of using bluff. Sure enough, the next moment, Romon sneered. Whether it's the Order of the Phoenix or the Death Eaters, you must have a way to get me this money easily. 3 days, I only give you 3 days, no matter what means you use. Seeing that the latter was silent, Romon's face slowly revealed the previous gentle smile. He took a step forward and patted the other party's tense shoulder. Relax, Snape, we were classmates before, and we will be colleagues in the future. By the way, as far as I know, just this year, Harry Potter, the savior who survived, will enroll in Hogwarts. Yeah, he. Seeing the cold glint in Snape's eyes, it looked like he was being touched, but it instantly scratched Romon's itch. He really couldn't stop. 13 years of imprisonment eventually caused him to develop some abnormal problems. For example, like to be a bitch. Harry Potter, haha, if you had succeeded in that matter, I think this child's name should be Severus, right? TSK, it's really sad, Snape. Not to mention that the woman you like was snatched away by that good-for-nothing James Potter, but when you look back, you actually want to protect your son for him. Ha ha ha. The unabashed ridicule finally made Snape unable to hold on any longer. Angry and rude, he pushed Romon out of his pharmacy, taking a money bag with him. Romon Kowalski, from now on, you can't even take a step into my apothecary. Also, this money is the last time. Since you are out now, go back to your American wizarding world as soon as possible. However, Romon chuckled and shook the money bag in his hand. He glanced left and right, and after making sure no one was there, he stepped forward slightly. He spoke coldly in a voice that only 2 people could hear. The voice was full of teasing and defiance. For the last time, Snape, don't be stupid again. I'll eat what you did for the rest of my life. Romon didn't care what Snape's mood was that night. At least he was in a pretty good mood. He was full of energy and didn't feel sleepy at all. I spent the whole night wandering around the familiar Hogwarts castle, and early the next morning I received a list of materials personally delivered to my door by the Master of Suffering, Snape. Even though the other party left without saying a word, Romon didn't feel angry at all. Instead, he immediately impatiently organized a medicine table in the dormitory and started working on it. Calculating the time, the news that the big devil himself has emerged will probably spread in the wizarding world soon. Before that, Romon must solve the problem of solidification and drying up of his body's magic power as soon as possible. While Romon was rapidly calculating and sifting through thousands of potion formulas in his mind, the British wizarding world, as he expected, really exploded. Daily Prophet. Ho ho ho, it's such an exciting day. I'm always flying around the Ministry of Magic diligently, and sure enough I was able to capture the breaking news about those old things again. Rita Skeeter, a female reporter from the Daily Prophet who had just transformed from a beetle into a human being, immediately walked towards her workbench impatiently. As if summoned by something, a quill suddenly stood up on a piece of white paper. Is one step of compromise to save life, or to fall into hell? The foolish Minister of Magic Fudge believed in a declaration of war from the United States Ministry of Magic, and boldly released the devil who almost destroyed the entire British wizarding world. Will the disaster 13 years ago happen again? Chapter 10. The Medicine Demon King and the Unspeakable Knight of Extreme Silver. New book. Begging for data. The Leaky Cauldron. One of the entrances to the British wizarding world, the connection point is Diagon Alley of the wizarding world. As mole wizards, the first place that comes into contact with the wizarding world is the Leaky Cauldron, where the number of guests every day is extraordinary. Ordinary wandering wizards, dark wizards, and even some wizards from pure-blood families will also have a drink again. Noisy and dirty are the eternal themes here. However, today, as usual, the tavern, which was full of noise and laughter and clinking glasses, suddenly fell into dead silence because of a sharp and incredible roar. Damn it! The Silver Devil is out of prison. That old bastard Cornelius Fudge, let him go. In an instant, everyone turned their heads blankly and looked towards the corner seats of the tavern. But I saw that there was a family of 3 sitting there at the moment. The man stood up with a shocked and angry face, leaning his body on the table, like an enraged lion, staring at the latest newspaper on the table. The Daily Prophet. Beside him, the woman looked aggrieved and held a big-headed child with obviously weird features. The child is dull, and the angle of his eyes is full of distortion. Obvious deformities. How could he do this? How could he do this? Cornelius Fudge. Brother, don't be so angry. Don't mention this damn name to me. Shut up. The woman's soft reassurance immediately seemed to add fuel to the fire, causing the man to roar even more frenziedly, and without knowing when, he directly took out his magic wand. I'm going to kill him. Cornelius Fudge, and that damn bastard. Romon Goldstein Kowalski, The Silver Devil. When the name came out of the man's mouth, the originally silent tavern suddenly became excited. A group of people who were sitting in their respective places, drinking and chatting, turned into enraged bulls and rushed to the man's table. He picked up the Daily Prophet on the table. Is one step of compromise to save life, or to fall into hell? The foolish Minister of Magic Fudge believed in a declaration of war from the United States Ministry of Magic, and boldly released the devil who almost destroyed the entire British wizarding world. Will the disaster 13 years ago happen again? Not to mention Rita Skeeter's professionalism, but at least the other party's professional skills are serious. Whether it is writing articles or writing news vocabulary, they're quite capable of catching the psychological loopholes of readers. When everyone saw the words in the newspaper, and who knew where Rita Skeeter got it from, an illustration of a prisoner's release consent form with a motion picture of Romon himself. Romon's handsome face with a gentle smile all the time made them dream back to the night 13 years ago. That was almost the night that wizards in the entire British wizarding world were most reluctant to mention. The bright moon is vast and the sky is dotted with stars. On a night with a cool summer evening breeze, with a continuous spread of pieces, the entire sky was covered with silver aurora, and the entire British wizarding world was shrouded. At the beginning, everyone combined this beauty, which seemed to be falling from the Milky Way, with legends such as Merlin, talking about possible beautiful stories. Romance and yearning for beautiful things have made people in the entire wizarding world, even if they are walking on the road and do not know each other, unknowingly, they have become more speculative with each other. And then, a very silver knight, a wizard with a beard on his face who looked like a homeless man, seemed to have thought of some terrible memories. He murmured in his mouth, with a trembling voice, and said the word that made everyone tremble, and then anger burst out like lava. A very silver knight. The name is very beautiful, and the sky that night was indeed beautiful enough. However, this was all in the first half of the night. What happened in the second half of the night was more profound in the memory of the entire wizarding world than the so-called beautiful night sky. Fake ... That devil, I want to kill him. No matter why that guy Fudge let that bastard out. Now that guy is no longer in Azkaban, then his life must be saved by I'll get it. It must be Dumbledore. Dumbledore must know where that guy has gone. It is even very possible that the Silver Devil is in Hogwarts. Merlin, is that guy Dumbledore crazy too? How dare he hide the Silver Devil in Hogwarts? I'm going to kill him. Let's go now. We must find that guy. The American Ministry of Magic. This is the United Kingdom. Amidst the roars, everyone, including wizards with a certain positive reputation in the outside world, shouted. Or maybe it's a dark wizard with a bad record, or even a Death Eater hiding in the dark. At this moment, it's all because of news about Romon's release from prison. They all became furious and completely abandoned their so-called positions and the so-called laws in the magic world. At this moment, everyone has only one thought in their mind: kill the Silver Demon King Romon, who had caused them 13 years of pain in one extremely silver night, and would have caused them pain for even longer. Also known as the Demon King. However, Tom Riddle, known as the Dark Lord, also has a large number of dark wizards as supporters. There were even some pure-blood wizards who were willing to join the Death Eaters and serve Voldemort. Only Romon, the so-called Silver Demon, the entire UK, and even the wizarding world of Europe, wanted to find a wizard who had good intentions towards Romon. It was no exaggeration to say that it was like finding a needle in a haystack. The moment the Daily Prophet broke the breaking news, the entire wizarding world exploded. Among them, summerers who worked in the Ministry of Magic, but hated Romon even more with gnashing of teeth, could not believe this ridiculous fact for the first time. In the end, when Fudge was forced to have no choice but to admit this and tell the story about the Ministry of Magic in the United States, everyone had to accept the news that the Silver Devil had been released. The headquarters of the British Ministry of Magic in London, Harris, who originally had jobs, took leave one after another, put on their hoods, wrapped themselves tightly, and headed outside. In the wizarding world, the major wizarding families went completely crazy after receiving the news. Malfoy family. Lucius looked at the letter sent by the owl in his hand, his cold expression dimming and brightening under the light. "What's wrong, honey? You look troubled." A soft voice came from behind, and when he looked back, it was his wife, who had just watched her son Draco come in. Lucius was silent for a while and handed over the letter in his hand. "That guy Romon, I'm afraid he will stay in Hogwarts." Narcissa : God, is Dumbledore planning to let that guy become a professor? Draco. Chapter 11. Pressure. New book. Please give me reviews and monthly tickets. Mention the name Romon for the entire wizarding world, especially Lucius and others who were pure-blooded wizards. It was as if they had awakened a nightmare that once dominated and conquered them all. That boy who came from the riddled countryside of the American wizarding world, in a real sense, crushed them all in all aspects. Shattered the pride and dignity passed down from generation to generation. It crushed their origin and family, which they had always been proud of. God, no, that kind of guy was released. but he was brought back to Hogwarts. What on earth is that guy Dumbledore trying to do? Is he really not worried at all? Lucius gritted his teeth. Under the candlelight in the study, his lips could not help but tremble when he spoke. In his pupils reflecting the firelight, he seemed to see him walking into the dirt in embarrassment in front of Romon. We must not let that guy stay in Hogwarts. There are definitely countless people who have the same idea as Lucius in the entire British wizarding world. Not even an exaggeration. Almost 80% of wizards have this idea. Some of them were irreparably damaged by that crazy night, but the vast majority of them are still in fear and hatred of Romon. So they join this huge wizard struggle that can even be described as out of control. British Ministry of Magic. Mr. Minister, so even though your secretary chose to oppose it and even directly joined in the siege of Romon Goldstein Kowalski, you still acted arbitrarily and chose to force the release of the Silver Devil. Rita Skeeter, the gold medal reporter of the Daily Prophet, looked at Minister of Magic Fudge, who looked aggrieved and even had to prepare his own manuscript, with a ferocious light on his brain shining in his eyes. In her eyes, whether the Minister of Magic has breaking news is what she needs to pay attention to. In the bright light of the camera, there was not even an error from the Ministry of Magic who came to stop him in Fudge's office at this moment. Like a bad old man abandoned by everyone. However, Fudge, aggrieved as he was now faced with sharp questions from Rita Skeeter. But he nodded without hesitation. Amid the uproar and Rita Skeeter's golden eyes, she chose to speak without hesitation. Yes, Miss Reporter, who came uninvited, and not only that, I must also say that it is not just me. Even if I am dismissed from this position at this moment, the newly appointed minister, whoever he is, will definitely. I dare not support such crazy things now. Romon Kowalski is indeed the culprit of the original disaster, but he can also be the bell-ringer of the next disaster in the British wizarding world. Fudge stood up slowly, and the aura exuding from his body made everyone present change their expressions. Even the unscrupulous reporter Rita Skeeter, who had always taken the absolute initiative in interviews, could not help but change her expression at this moment. Mr. Minister, if you think that exaggerating the horror of the Silver Demon Lord Romon at this time can free you from the responsibility for this matter, I think you are thinking that all of us are too stupid. Fudge glanced at everyone coldly. Then he took out a copy of the magic potion evaluation from the drawer. He just got it today and threw it away in front of everyone. Facing the aggressive looks from around him, he, who has always been criticized for being helped up by women, exudes a powerful aura. Shocked the whole audience. Yes, you are all the smartest people, especially our Miss Rita Skeeter. I have to say that I am very curious. After the wizards who were instigated by you successfully took off the head of that boy Romon, are you ready for a head-on war with the American wizarding world? Rita Skeeter's expression changed, and she and everyone gathered together on the report in front of them. After seeing the report information above, his pupils suddenly shrank. This is not. You want to say this is impossible? Fudge interrupted what he was about to blurt out. He looked at everyone with unabashed mockery. These guys he once had to deal with carefully, but now that Romon's affairs were revealed, he no longer had to take care of them. There are only a handful of people in the entire Ministry of Magic who are willing to listen to his orders. One thing to say. At this moment, Fudge wanted Romon to die in the British wizarding world even more than those present, even those wizards who were frantically searching for clues about Romon. In this case, there is no doubt that Fudge will become the great man who tries to prevent disaster in times of crisis. He will become someone more than Dumbledore, become the future Merlin of the British wizarding world. Fudge sneered, and while lighting a cigar for himself, he took a deep breath, and amid the smoke, he told the terrifying reality that made everyone present tremble. Unfortunately, this report is the result of having people from the Potion Development Department study it overnight. And more than a month ago, this report has been circulated among the major wizarding families in the American wizarding world. Romon Goldstein Kowalski. In our British wizarding world, everyone wants to kill the Silver Devil, but in the American wizarding world, he is the reincarnation of Merlin. Boom. A huge explosion exploded in Romon's residence. The huge movement, even though it was isolated by a curse, immediately attracted the attention of the teachers at Hogwarts. However, after just a moment, even Dumbledore turned his head away. In the principal's office. Albus, are you really sure? I don't deny Romon's excellence. He was a legend in the school. Even now, those students in his class will never forget it, but he's really too dangerous. After a slight tremor, he ignored the grumbling portraits of curses on the wall of the principal's office. Professor McGonagall began to persuade again with a look of unwillingness. However, after Dumbledore felt that there was no danger to Romon, he lowered his head again. He only responded with a smile to Professor McGonagall's persuasion. McGonagall, I understand your concerns, but I must reiterate that yes, Romon's joining Hogwarts is a fact that has been determined. Not only you, but also the school board of directors can't stop it. As he said that, he raised his hand. The words were so fierce that he even threatened to remove his school board notification letter. And at the same time, in the residence where Romon is located, Romon, who was obviously charred and slightly embarrassed, looked excitedly at the potion in his hand that seemed to have the Milky Way flowing through it. There was a bright golden light in his eyes, as if there were unknown words constantly flowing through them. Elizabeth, you succeeded. 13 years of imprisonment will be completely ended at this moment. Chapter 12 The Tempering of Wisdom Creates Ultimate Power. Goldfinger, new book. Please give me reviews and monthly votes. Master, I can feel that this is more pure and terrifying than the potions you prepared before. The power contained in it is like an unbreakable eye of the storm. Elizabeth wandered around Romon. A pair of snake pupils stared at Romon's hands, changing the light and shadow at that moment, like a potion containing a universe, full of human shock and admiration. Romon's current physical condition, if it is really a fight, with Elizabeth's complete transformation at this moment, becoming the infant feathered serpent's strength, Romon can be defeated or even killed. However, in Elizabeth's eyes at this moment, Romon could be easily killed by her. But it seems to be standing on the top of the legendary 10,000 Gods mountain. Master, the original truth of the world. Master, you will definitely become a greater existence than Merlin, the god of magic. No, you will be a creation godlike existence. Such an exaggerated flattery, but Elizabeth said it very firmly and seriously. In today's world, if anyone really understands the horror of Romon, then Elizabeth says that she is the second, and absolutely no one dares to call herself the first. However, for such flattery, Romon just smiled lightly. The voice of praise had been with him since he came to this world and became a student at Hogwarts, and never left until that absurd silver night. He is worshipped and revered by everyone, and is regarded as the existence of the future star. To be able to have such ability and accumulation today, in addition to being unusual as a time traveler, Romon's own Goldfinger is also inseparable. Romon's eyes with a holy golden light stared at the potion in front of him. The transformation factor is 0.872%. This ratio is really difficult to grasp. It took more than 10 years of research and matching of countless potions, plus 10 consecutive failures, to finally achieve this. A legendary alchemist like Nick Mailer will never be able to refine the ingredients of these potions to this level. Romon muttered to himself, speaking words that Elizabeth could not understand, but did not understand. And what she did know was, in Romon's eyes, this bottle of potion at this moment was completely unusual. Heart of all wisdom, even a Romon doesn't know how to get the Goldfinger. An existence similar to a super-intelligent brain. Not only can it provide Romon with super learning assistance ability, it can also make him feel like a god in terms of research and new field development. This is why, at such a young age, Romon could be regarded as a ruling demon king in Hogwarts at that time, and even among the younger generation of the British wizarding community. In the defense against dark arts class, all kinds of combat magic were basically learned in front of him once and twice, and later on, he could learn them from angles that no one could have imagined. Make preliminary improvements to it. In the boring history class of the wizarding world, the professor who was a monk striking the clock for a day, because he sat in the classroom, he felt like an enemy every day. As for the charm class and potion class, Romon is the nightmare of the professor. Glancing at the quiet forbidden forest night outside the window, the corners of Romon's mouth twitched slightly. He couldn't help but murmured in a low voice, Hogwarts, your devil ... is back. This rare bottle of potion, officially named Rebirth by Romon, was poured into his mouth. As the potion was instantly activated in Romon's body, Romon instantly became a blue light source in the dark night, and the bones, meridians, and flesh of the body seemed to be seen through. However, in such a terrifying scene, Romon not only did not have the slightest fear. Instead, he suddenly began to chant, a chant full of sacred and religious feeling. With the echo of the wind caused by the whistling magic power, bursts of Sanskrit sounds instantly began to spread around the entire Hogwarts. Wow! The figures of Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall instantly appeared outside Romon's residence, looking at the door that was blown to pieces by magic, and Romon who seemed to be transformed in that room. Even though Dumbledore was well informed, he still had the first-generation Dark Lord as his friend. At this moment, my mind went blank. And just when he was stunned, a figure that looked like a black bat suddenly appeared. When he saw Romon's image changed drastically and his whole body turned into a bright star, especially when he heard the strange spell from the other party's mouth that was unheard of in the entire wizarding world. Snape's expression couldn't help but tighten. He had also heard this strange chanting spell 13 years ago, and absolutely cannot forget it, as the movement on Romon's side became louder and louder. Soon all the teachers at Hogwarts gathered here nervously, until the light on Romon gradually dimmed. The body gradually returned to normal and slowly fell to the ground. Everyone cautiously stepped forward. Mr. Romon, you are now. Romon smiled slightly. I'm fine, Principal Dumbledore. I feel better than ever at this moment. The jet black eyes were as deep as black holes. The calm words, accompanied by the magic power that shook the air, went from boiling to gradually calming down. But it made Dumbledore, a great wizard, shrink his pupils. This fluctuation of magic power can rarely be emitted by even my good friend unless he is in an extremely abundant state. After being stunned for a few seconds, Dumbledore finally recovered. He took a deep look at Romon, whose demeanor seemed to have become much more dangerous, and took a deep breath. Well, in that case, I think we can continue to enjoy this rare peaceful night. When the students start school in a while, Those little wizards will not be easy to manage. Everyone didn't know whether this night was peaceful or not, but at least they couldn't sleep this night. Even Snape couldn't help but observe Romon with his eyes when he left. There was a broken potion bottle on the ground, and there was a very strong and pure potion smell in the room. However, even he, a master of potions, could not figure out whether this kind of breath matched the properties of the potions he had given Romon before. Is it something they can radiate? Or can this kind of terrifying magic power fluctuation really be brought about by a bottle of magic potion? Just when everyone left and Dumbledore was about to leave, Romon suddenly called out to him, "Professor Dumbledore, you just said that the day for new students to start school is coming soon. I wonder, as a professor at Hogwarts, can I also join in the guidance of new students?" Dumbledore. Romon is smiling, very sincerely. However, thinking of the crazy wizards outside at this moment, Dumbledore had reason to believe that this boy definitely had some restless thoughts. Chapter 13. Before the plot, Hermione Granger thanks to the boss, Mrs. Dimitrescu, for the 1,000 point reward. Thank you. Except for the two of them, there is no one else here at this moment. Dumbledore also had no scruples. He stared deeply at the man in front of him, the godson of his old friend, the once proud son of heaven. However, unlike when he faced himself back then, where he was more or less uneasy and wary, Romon now only gave him a sense of calm, just as if it is no longer possible for him to cause any life-level harm to him. Romon, you should know very well what you are facing now. In fact, tonight, I have received strong protests from the school board, and they even want to remove me as the principal. So do you know how dangerous you are? This is the British wizarding world, not the United States. However, such heartfelt words were met with a sarcastic sneer from Romon. PFFT. The laughter seemed so abrupt in the silent night. Dumbledore narrowed his eyes slightly. As the greatest white wizard of this century, the pressure emanating from him did not have even the slightest impact on Romon at this moment. Professor Dumbledore, you are right. This is the British wizarding world, not the United States. But, what next? Romon spread his hands, and an emotion called unruliness that had never appeared in his eyes before made Dumbledore feel nervous. However, Romon did not give the other party a chance to be nagging at all. Glancing at the Hogwarts night outside the window, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. This place really hasn't changed at all. It reminds me of when I first entered school. However, it seems that during the time I was imprisoned, someone appeared in the wizarding world. A great man. You say so? Professor Dumbledore. Looking at Romon's eyes full of strange smiles, Dumbledore naturally knew who the big shot in Romon's words was. The second-generation Dark Lord, Tom Riddle. Professor Dumbledore, I heard that Mr. Dark Lord is also a very good human wizard. You know, I like to deal with good people the most. Dumbledore's eyes flickered briefly, and then he snorted coldly. Romon, Voldemort is dead. This is a recognized fact. However, now that you have made your decision, I can't stop you anymore. I will arrange a new mole for you, and you will be responsible for taking her to prepare for school. I think these things should be useful to you. No problem. Dumbledore said nothing and left the next moment. And just in the early morning of the next day, a document with some information written on it was delivered to Romon. Professor McGonagall's face was serious and full of warning. Nowadays, there are tens of thousands of people in the British wizarding community who want to kill you. Mr. Romon, the most important thing you should do at this time is to use your intelligence and leave the British wizarding community rationally. However, Romon was not interested at all. Looking at the name of the new student on the document in his hand, the corner of his mouth curled up. Finally, when he came to this world, he had already begun to prepare for this day. Although that incident happened during this period and it became the biggest surprise. But fortunately, now I have caught up again. Hermione Granger, one of the three protagonists of Harry Potter, the future Miss Know-It-All. Romon put the documents away, smiled at Professor McGonagall, and once again rejected the other party's kind proposal. With a wave of his hand, he carried his space-folding box and headed outside Hogwarts. But I was thinking about it in my mind. I am responsible for taking Hermione to prepare for the new semester, so Hagrid, who disappeared yesterday, must have gone to find our savior Harry just like in the original work. In addition to this, Hagrid also shoulders another task given by Dumbledore. Magic Stone. Master, I can feel that there are many eyes around Hogwarts. They think they are hiding well, but in fact, in the sky, Elizabeth's body shape changed. She spread her wings and shuttled Romon through the clouds. But the Hogwarts campus behind him and below was rapidly shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. Further and further. Hearing this, Romon casually glanced at the thick clouds below. The golden light in his eyes flashed, and as the magic power surged, it was like a surveillance satellite, monitoring everything in the mountains and dense forests below. All insights. Haha, there are at least 200 people, heralds from the Ministry of Magic, and Death Eaters. Haha, I think the British wizarding community should award me the greatest peace award in history, for no other reason. Only I can make these two sides, who can never stand together, live in peace. And while Romon was full of sarcastic whispers, in the dense forest outside Hogwarts, two groups of wizards wearing masks and tight black robes were gathering together. The atmosphere is a little weird. Whether it's the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic, or these Death Eaters running rampant in the underground world. Basically, when the two parties look at each other, they can roughly guess the identity of the other party. However, no one present did so. We are responsible for guarding the west side. As soon as that bastard comes out of Hogwarts, we will send a signal as soon as possible. The first man, whose actual identity was the topper of the British Ministry of Magic, spoke first. In one sentence, the Death Eaters opposite looked at each other and nodded slowly. Then we are responsible for another intersection. One thing must be made clear. No matter who it is, if you find that guy, you must not kill him as soon as possible. The Auror nodded, the hatred and murderous intent in his eyes almost revealed in reality. Of course, it's so cheap to kill this kind of guy so easily. He doesn't even deserve to go to hell. However, they were completely unexpected. Even though they had made preparations to encircle the sky around Hogwarts, they were in front of Elizabeth, an existence that had been transformed by Romon and could already be called the Western Divine Beast. It is useless. While these guys were still gritting their teeth here, staring at the professors coming in and out of Hogwarts, gritting their teeth and telling the comrades around them about the tragic situation of being tricked by Romon. In the suburbs of London, England, in an ordinary house that is not too gorgeous. A few days ago, Hermione, who had retrieved the letters in her inbox at Mrs. Granger's request, finally received her Hogwarts admission notice. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Sir Merlin, First Class, Chief Wizard of the Wizengamot, President of the International Federation of Wizards. Dear Miss Granger. Chapter 14 Tutor. New book. Please give me reviews and the monthly tickets. Dear Miss Granger, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. Semester is set to start on September 1st. We will be waiting for your owl to hear from you by July 31st. When the Grangers read the letters in their hands, they all looked in disbelief. Almost without hesitation, they attributed all this to a prank that they didn't know who the instigator was. Magic. If there really is magic in this world, then I am afraid that I, an old dentist, will be the first to be laid off. But this setting of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry it's kind of interesting. It looks like it was made by some rascal living nearby. Mr. Granger curled his lips, and casually tossed a letter aside. He got up and picked up his coat and was about to go out. Mrs. Granger, who was sitting on a sofa beside her, also shook her head helplessly. It was Hermione at the moment, lying expectantly by the window, looking out at the courtyard with fallen leaves. His eyes were full of anticipation. Magic, let alone a child, even an adult, who can refuse it? But this has a greater lethality for Hermione, who has a stronger desire for knowledge. A few days ago, when her parents didn't believe it, Hermione secretly wrote a reply to her letter in the middle of the night and gave it to the owl that had been staying by her window. After watching the owl cleverly pick up the letter, it flew away immediately. Hermione inevitably looked forward to the agreed day when Hogwarts would send freshman tutors. It will come. Magic. If it doesn't exist, what else can explain the strange things that happened to me before? Just when Hermione was expecting and fantasizing about something, suddenly, a sudden appearance. Even though she was distracted just now, Hermione still dared to absolutely believe that the handsome young man outside the window, wearing a crisp suit and dressed in a noble manner, must have appeared out of thin air. A sharp exclamation came from Hermione's mouth, startled the Granger couple in the room. What happened? Mr. Granger walked quickly, but saw Hermione's face was horrified, pointing out the window with unconcealed surprise in her eyes. Before he could look outside, the doorbell suddenly rang. The doorbell jingled so hard that the Grangers didn't even react. Hermione, however, was already running towards the door like a squirrel that had found a pine cone. Opened the door. A strange, medicinal smell flew into the house, and the young man standing at the door with a gentle smile immediately made Granger's family stand on the spot. Mr. Granger. Madame, this is our Miss Hermione Granger. It is an honor to meet you. Please allow me to introduce myself. Since Miss Granger responded to her letter and agreed to enroll in our Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, I, as the school's new student tutor, am responsible for Miss Granger's preparation before the start of school. Romon Goldstein Kowalski, my name is. The Grangers. Romon's appearance was too deceptive. It was as if the masculinity and beauty that a god in mythology should possess were gathered on his body, with a tall but not aggressive figure, coupled with a mysterious and noble temperament. As soon as he appeared, he immediately shocked several people in the room. And Hermione, a little girl, was instantly captured by this guy with beautiful flaxen hair and a tall and straight posture. I'm sorry, sir. Did you just say, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry? Are you sure you are not making fun of us? If you are from an art school, I'm sorry, Hermione. Mr. Granger was the first to react. Not taking out his shotgun on the spot and driving the guy out was the biggest concession he made for Romon's extraordinary temperament and appearance. However, he wasn't done yet. Hermione, who had recovered from her shock, stepped forward and grabbed a corner of Romon's suit excitedly. Magic. What you just used was magic, right? It just appeared so suddenly and out of thin air. That's magic, right?" Romon was slightly startled by the excitement of Hermione, but then he smiled slightly and nodded. Looking at the confused Granger couple, Romon's lips curled up slightly. "You too, I know you have a lot of questions now, but I wonder if we can sit down and answer these questions while drinking tea." Today's regular customers of Mr. Granger's clinic are destined to be let go. And after seeing the tricks Romon showed, especially when he saw Romon casually snap his fingers, it was the moment when Mrs. Granger had long complained that the stove was still the same, and it became brand new. No matter how magical everything in front of you is. Mr. Granger also had to admit the reality of what he had experienced. Looking at Romon, who was holding black tea and smiling, Mr. and Mrs. Granger looked at each other, and then at Hermione, who almost never took her eyes off Romon, and her reaction was not that reserved of a girl. After hesitating for a moment, he spoke. Mr. Kowalski, you can just call me by my name." Romon smiled. Mr. Granger nodded. Finally, he asked the question he was most concerned about. "Mr. Romon, so what status does the wizard you are talking about belong to in the UK? Noble, or what?" "You know that before this, we had no idea that we would encounter this kind of thing. Even in our opinion, wizards are something made up." Romon is naturally aware of the concerns of the Grangers. Such concerns are also an important choice that young wizards from Mull families have to face. However, what Mr. Granger said, which even reminded him of royalty and nobility, was destined to come to nothing. Romon put down the teacup in his hand helplessly. "I'm sorry, sir. What you said is not only impossible. If Miss Hermione becomes a wizard, there is a high probability that her future life will be in the wizarding world. As for Mulls, it's just ordinary people. Wizards are not allowed to perform magic at will in front of ordinary people," Romon said, looking at the stove not far away that still exuded the new luster of billing, and added, "At least that's the rule." Chapter 15. Invitation from Mr. and Mrs. Granger to stay overnight. New book asking for flower reviews and monthly tickets. After hearing Romon's answer, especially when they heard that even if they learn magic in the future, they would not be able to cast it at will, the Granger couple's already unsteady ideas suddenly became more shaken. But at this time, Hermione expressed strong proactive emotions. "No. Mom and Dad, I'm going to Hogwarts. I'm going to become a wizard. Please, magic, that would be so cool." Looking at their daughter acting cute and coquettishly in front of them, the Granger couple, who only have one child, find it even more difficult to make a choice. After all, Romon made it clear when he sat down. Not all wizards are good people. There are also some wizards in this world who do dirty things and even commit murder and arson. This business is full of dangers. If my daughter... Seeing the reactions of several people, Romon raised his eyes slightly, suddenly reached out and raised his hand to Granger in front of him. The next moment, Hermione, who was still acting coquettishly in the arms of Mr. and Mrs. Granger, screamed and floated in the air. Before several people could scream, intense fluctuations, accompanied by bursts of ethereal light, appeared on Hermione. Displayed on the body, an invisible airflow began to spread in the room. "Ah! Hermione, Mr. Romon, what are you doing?" Looking at the shocked and angry Granger couple, Romon raised his eyes slightly, and with a wave of his hand, Hermione slowly landed on the sofa from midair. Looking at the surprised and uncertain people, he shook his head regretfully. "Unfortunately, Mr. Granger, my appearance is not accidental. If Miss Granger wants to survive in the future, and you don't want to die at the hands of your own daughter, there is nothing you can do to stop this. The fact that I can appear here proves that the power of the wizard in Miss Granger can no longer be allowed to exist naturally. It must accept human guidance. If you don't learn magic in time and tame this power..." Romon paused and raised his hand again. A burst of light appeared from his hand, and the magnificent light and shadow moved around, turning into a burst of void images. It was a person, a man with a crazy look. He seemed to be struggling in pain. Suddenly, his whole person exploded and turned into a terrifying black mist, instantly destroying several surrounding houses. Some people around him were also knocked away. When some of them landed, it was obvious that they were no longer alive. "Oh God, what the hell is this?" "That person, no, what kind of monster is that?" Hearing the exclamations of Mr. and Mrs. Granger, and Hermione being held in their arms, Romon's eyes flickered slightly. He spat out a term for a magical creature that was extremely terrifying in the wizarding world. The Obscurus is a magical parasite that appears in the body of the wizard because magic power cannot be guided. The wizard who carries them is called an Obscurus, an extremely unstable and lethal existence. Romon looked at Hermione, who was also obviously frightened, and shook his head slightly. "I have seen the magic situation in Miss Granger's body just now. There is no doubt that it has reached a dangerous and controllable critical point. If it is not controlled in time, it will be very painful. Regret. Of course, this level of magic power is extremely rare even among young wizards who come from a wizarding family. As long as she is properly trained, Miss Granger will definitely become a great wizard. It won't be a big problem to serve in the Ministry of Magic in the future." After saying that, Romon said nothing more. He sat down again and picked up the black tea from before. On the coffee table nearby, a teapot flew up out of thin air and filled Romon with tea. In the end, the Grangers had to accept this, a choice full of magic. Looking at Romon who was about to get up and leave, Hermione on the side suddenly spoke. "Mr. Romon, Are you going back to Hogwarts? Romon shook his head. I will take you into the wizarding world tomorrow and buy the things you need for admission there. So tonight I will find a hotel to stay overnight. As soon as he finished speaking, for some unknown reason, Hermione suddenly moved forward and grabbed the corner of his clothes. Our house is very big, and there is one room. Mr. Romon, why don't you stay at our house tonight? As he said that, he couldn't help but look at his parents beside him. The Grangers looked at each other, thought about it, nodded, and extended the invitation. Yes, Mr. Romon, to be honest, I really have a lot of questions to ask now. Hermione is our only child after all. Mrs. Granger also immediately nodded to persuade her to stay. Mr. Romon, please stay at our house tonight. I just can't wait to try that magical stove. By the way, I will clean up the room for you now. Looking at Mrs. Granger, who had already stood up and walked upstairs without waiting for him to refuse, and Hermione, who had a pleading look on her face, Romon thought for a moment and nodded directly. Hermione, this know-it-all lady, seems to be looking at her in an unusual way right now. However, despite his appearance, he looks like a senior student, but the actual age is the same as Harry's parents. Romon, apart from admiring Miss Know-it-all at this moment, is also full of curiosity about the direction of her future plot. I wonder if the original plot will continue to happen with the existence of his butterfly, or there may be some deviation. Mr. and Mrs. Granger are undoubtedly passionate. Although Romon has already experienced the food desert of Great Britain, Mrs. Granger's care can still be seen from the table full of stews and barbecues. Without any pretense, this dinner was undoubtedly full of joy. Under the adoring gaze of little girl Hermione, Romon cast a wandless spell and put the drunken Mr. Granger on the bed, and the dinner was finally over. At night, Romon returns to his room. A complaining voice came from his wrist. Elizabeth was like a mayfly in the air, and a sour voice came out of her mouth. Hiss. These vulgar mugs actually arranged a room like this for the master. I will tear this damn slum house to pieces with a storm. And that damn Xiao bitchy, who has no shame at such a young age. Dirty mud. Noticing the change in Romon's eyes, Elizabeth decisively stopped the vicious words she was about to say. Just when she was full of anxiety, a soft and waxy voice with obvious hesitation came from outside the door. Professor Romon, are you asleep? Chapter 16, Dharma Temple, Wizards and Masters, New Book. Please give me reviews and the monthly votes. Professor Romon, are you asleep? Opening the door and looking at Hermione, who was wearing cute pajamas and holding a large bunny stuffed animal in her arms, Romon couldn't help but look towards the other side of the room where Mr. and Mrs. Granger lived. This scene, especially at night, happened at the door of a strange man's room. Even if Romon didn't have that in mind, he couldn't help but feel a little guilty at this moment. However, the innocent Hermione was completely unaware of the recklessness of her behavior at this moment. She was so excited that she had already been conquered by the magic spell Romon showed today. All I can think about is how I will become a wizard in the future, as powerful as Romon. Professor Romon, I have many questions about magic that I want to ask you. Anyway, he was not sleepy, and the little girl was so energetic that she really didn't look like she was sleepy. Romon finally had to open the door to his room, taking the trouble to answer Miss Hermione's questions one after another. This question has already passed most of the night. Finally, seeing Hermione fall asleep unconsciously, Romon had no choice but to get up and give the room to him, while he sat on the sofa in the living room. Take a deep breath and slowly close your eyes. Next moment, when Romon returned mentally, he seemed to be in a strange space. This is a place full of sacredness and mystery. A magnificent palace that seems to be floating among the clouds. It is said to be a palace, but the seemingly endless rows of books and scrolls make this place more like a library. This is part of Romon Goldfinger. All the knowledge Romon has today, as well as the direction of future research, can be obtained from here. Go to the rows of bookshelves in the pharmacy area. With a thought, hundreds of thick books flew out, and a string of golden words similar to the skill tree of online games in his previous life appeared in the air in front of Romon. Chickly Goosey Alchemy Formula, plus, Unicorn Blood Factor Control, plus, Alchemy Middle. Imitation Magical Biological Heart Source Furnace, equals, Biological Alchemy Middle. Mage's Heart Magic Source. Wandwood Middle. Hundreds of essences plus detailed explanation of wand core source plus research on 307 kinds of advanced essence materials of magical creatures equals Biological Alchemy Middle. Mage's Blood Magic Source. Romon looked at the several tree diagrams in front of him. 3 in total. The length itself is not too long. Mage's Heart, and Mage's Blood. And just a few days ago, Romon used the bottle of Trop Magic Potion, Rebirth, to officially activate the completed, original magic mark. For these 3 research results, the previous premises are not too many. However, only Romon himself knows that in order to get the above things done, he has worked hard for nearly 20 years. It can even be said that before entering Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, when he learned that his godfather was Newt Scamander, known as the Hufflepuff headmaster at the same time as Dumbledore and the first Dark Lord Grindelwald, Romon had already begun to fight for his own. In the future, efforts and plans have been launched. And now, his efforts have finally paid off. Except for the super magical creature, Feathered Serpent, Elizabeth, who was created by him on his wrist. Romon's current body is his greatest masterpiece. Mage's heart. Let his own magic power increase without the limitations and nodes of human existence, and he can grow himself wantonly. Blood of the mage greatly increases the fusion of the magic power in his body and the various tissues of the body, so that the magic power truly belongs to him, and there will be no loss of control. When necessary, he can even independently launch magic defense for Romon. As for the last, it is also the most critical. Original magic power imprint forms an extremely perfect cycle of the magic power stored in the body. While increasing the natural growth rate of magic power can also carry out high-level life transformation on Romon's own body. The me now, even if Dumbledore doesn't let go and confronts me one-on-one, I can easily withdraw and leave. Even in a duel, I can guarantee at least a 50-50 split. Romon murmured contentedly. Romon was not uninterested in the treasures, spells, and magical creatures in the original Harry Potter books. However, as a time traveler, especially when he saw that people like Dumbledore were about to die, he set the direction of development for himself early on. Life transformation. The power of wizards in this world, in Romon's view, is a bit low level after all. Except for alchemists like Nicole Flamel, who have made a certain improvement in the span factor of the life level, the others are very low level. Just a bunch of ordinary humans who can use strange magic. Romon doesn't want to be a wizard. What he wants to be is the mage in his own mind. Even, the god of law. For this goal, I need to learn and research, and there are too many. Thinking of this, Romon couldn't help thinking. The next moment, more and more books flew out of thin air, and in the void in front of him, golden text gradually appeared. Simplified equation of 1,000 kinds of spells, 38% completed, plus, research on the degree to which different magic wands induce magic power, 69% completed, plus, silent spell increase equation, 100% completed, plus, 10 spells double superposition, 100% completed, equals, rule spell extraction of death magic factor, 17% completed, plus, research on out-of-control silence essence, 0% completed, equals, rule control, shadow power. Advanced research on transfiguration curse, 85% completed plus magic creature fusion, 12% completed plus bioalchemy mage spirit, 0% completed equals avatar of high-level magic power. Early morning. The breakfast atmosphere at Granger's house was, so to speak, full of embarrassment. Even the lively Hermione was blushing at the moment, biting the steamed bun with a face of shame, while eating mechanically, while carefully looking at Romon at the side. Thinking about what happened to me last night, this guest didn't have a good rest. Hermione couldn't help but feel even more ashamed, and at the same time, when her eyes looked at Romon who was eating elegantly, she couldn't help but become a little admiring. Well, Professor Romon, so gentle. At the same time, the forces around Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, who have been waiting for Romon to appear, finally couldn't sit still. Damn it, the Hogwarts board didn't find that guy. The Silver Lord is gone. Chapter 17 Harry Potter, The Lingering Voldemort. New book. Please give me reviews and the monthly votes on the streets of London. Following closely behind Romon, who was wearing a well-made suit and had an outstanding temperament, he noticed that all the elegant ladies and ordinary aunts looking at Romon on the roadside around him. At a young age, Hermione had an inexplicable sense of urgency that made her feel uncomfortable. While instinctively moving closer to Romon, asked his own question. Professor Romon, it says that first-year students need 3 wizard robes and a wand. Why don't I see your wand? Romon smiled lightly, as if he thought of something interesting, and waved his hand casually. I used to have a magic wand, but some interesting things happened during that period. Then she noticed that Hermione was looking at the tools and equipment requested by the wizarding world in the letter, and her frown became more and more severe, and she no longer kept it secret. In an alley opposite the Leaky Cauldron, Romon looked around, and after confirming that no one was there, he coughed dryly. Okay, next I will officially take you into the wizarding world, but before that, there is one thing I need to explain to you in advance. As he spoke, under Hermione's surprised and puzzled gaze, Romon's body suddenly twisted, and a dark light flashed behind him. Romon, who was originally handsome and tall, turned into a man who smelled of pungent potion. A middle-aged man with greasy hair and a gloomy face. The black bat-like robe was said to be worn on the other person's body, but Hermione felt more at the moment that it was growing on the other person's body. It was really. The oil production rate of this black robe seemed to be somewhat visible to the naked eye. Hermione, don't be nervous. This is a high-level transformation spell, and you have to remember what I look like now. Severus Snape, the potions teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and one of the 4 major houses. Head of Slytherin, haha, a big shot. Hermione nodded in understanding, but spoke in confusion. So Professor Romon, why do you want to look like someone else? The little Lily's confused and innocent question made Romon scratch his head in embarrassment. Thinking of those British wizards who wanted to cut themselves into pieces. Romon ended up telling a white lie. Hermione, you have to know that sometimes fame is not necessarily a good thing. It is very tiring and requires a lot of unnecessary trouble. As he said this, He didn't give little Hermione a chance to think clearly, pulling the other person along. He walked towards the Leaky Cauldron bar opposite. The moment the door was pushed open, the old wood mixed with the strange aroma of wine made Romon take a deep breath. Wow, it still has that familiar smell here. I seem to have seen mice scurrying around on the floor. However, when Romon opened his eyes, in addition to a group of gloomy-looking wizards, what caught the eye was that sloppy man who stood out from the crowd. Professor Snape, I thought you should be in the academy now, but I didn't expect Professor Dumbledore to send you out as well. Hagrid looked at Snape, who walked in with surprise, his eyes full of confusion. In fact, every year Hogwarts holds a special event to introduce young Muggle wizards to the wizarding world. A lot of work before the start of school is targeted at these Muggle families. Even people like Professor McGonagall in the school have certain guidance indicators for new students. However, this situation is a special case for Snape, an old bat. In fact, this guy, with that kind of temperament, really doesn't look like a good person. When a Muggle family sees another teacher coming to their door, they probably regard the other person as a liar, and they only need to use some small tricks and show a few simple spells. It can be settled easily. However, this situation is a big exception for Snape. Once when Snape came to visit, a pair of Muggle parents were so frightened that they called the police. Since then, Dumbledore has not arranged such a jobs for the other party. Snape heard this but ignored the other party. He looked at the two figures beside him, one large and one small. And these two people are not ordinary people. Xavier, Harry Potter, and Quirrell, the defense against the dark arts professor at Hogwarts who has Voldemort in his body. Harry Potter. Romon only glanced at the Xavier and then turned to look at Professor Quirrell, who was submissive and stammered. His eyes seemed to glance at the thick turban of the other party with deep meaning. Professor Quirrell, I didn't expect to see you here, but as the defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, this is not an easy job to deal with. I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation in the next year. To the sudden words of Snape in front of me, and the friendly hand extended, Quirrell was stunned for a second. However, Voldemort, who was inhabiting the other party's body, immediately felt a strong directed emotion. There is almost no doubt, just an intuition convinced him that the strange Snape in front of him had discovered him. However, no matter what, as long as the other party does not target you or expose yourself in public, Voldemort could only keep quiet. Romon smiled slightly at Voldemort's reaction, took Hermione's little hand and walked towards the entrance of Diagon Alley behind the tavern. Merlin, what did I see? Could Snape laugh? Hagrid looked at Snape's leaving figure and murmured in shock. At the same time, Voldemort immediately sent a message to warn the somewhat complacent Professor Quirrell. Watch out for that guy. He's not a Snape at all. Find out who he is. His appearance is very likely and will affect the execution of our plan. Quirrell was startled for a moment. Yes, Master, I will do it as soon as possible. At the same time, who was that big tall guy just now? God, I've never seen anyone stronger than him. He looks like a giant, Hermione asked curiously. Her little hand was held by Ronald, and she ignored her at the moment. Romon smiled slightly. Walking to a wall, he tapped a few bricks with a finger. The next moment, a brand new world appeared in front of the two of them amidst Hermione's exclamation. Welcome to the wizarding world, Diagon Alley. Hermione, from today on, not only are wizards with giant blood like Hagrid, you can even see giant dragons. If you are confident enough. Romon's eyes flickered and he murmured something like a sigh. Eternal life will also start from this moment, waving to you from afar. Chapter 18. The Silver Devil will eat the disobedient little wizard. Please vote for the new book. Diagon Alley was crowded with people. This time is not just the day when new students are admitted to a magic school called Hogwarts. There is more than one magic school in this world. So, when Hermione saw people wearing various colored wizard robes, or people of the same age accompanying each other, or accompanied by their parents, they were shopping in one store after another, and there were many things that she had never heard of. Hermione froze on the spot. The little hand held by Romon was also nervously holding onto Romon's hand. This is Diagon Alley. Wizards basically come here to purchase things. All the teaching materials, equipment, wands and other things that young wizards need must be purchased here. Hearing this, Hermione swallowed and nodded dully. But then, something seemed to come to mind. Hermione couldn't help but look up worriedly. But, do I bring enough money? Romon waved his hand. Hogwarts naturally has ways to deal with young Muggle wizards like Hermione. Every year, Gringotts has a fixed amount of exchange of pounds for gold galleons for Muggles. However, Romon's current situation makes it difficult to enter such a place. Because of that night, Gringotts' security, which had not had any problems for thousands of years, was full of loopholes, and thousands of vaults were looted. Anyway, even Romon still doesn't know who looted these vaults. However, the blame fell on him, the Silver Demon King. If Gringotts hadn't helped, Romon would have been extradited to the United States Ministry of Magic. It's not like being imprisoned in Azkaban for more than 10 years. Romon shook his head, and the corners of his mouth curved slightly. Don't worry about money. Miss Hermione, I think I have reason to introduce to you. The relationship between Professor Snape in front of you and me is extraordinary, and he happens to be the richest person in the wizarding world. An outstanding potions expert. Well, The most important thing is that he has a heart that is willing to share. I prefer to call him the #1 philanthropist in the wizarding world." Listening to Romon's words full of recognition, Hermione, who was confused, suddenly felt a strong admiration for the Snape that Romon had transformed into before her eyes. The other party doesn't look like a good person in image, but in fact, he is such a person who is willing to share. I will definitely work harder in his class from now on. On Romon's side, he was walking towards Ollivander's wand shop with Hermione. At the same time, Hagrid had also brought Harry Potter to Gringotts. "We are here, Gringotts Wizarding Bank." Except for that accidental night more than 10 years ago, there has been no problem for thousands of years. As Hagrid said, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression became a little weird. "Like anger, like shame. Harry, remember not to say a name when entering here, otherwise." Before Hagrid could finish speaking, a voice came from the other side. "That's enough, Agatha. Stop messing around. You don't need a broomstick like Nimbus 2000. I won't waste a gold galleon on those things. If you continue to disobey me, the Silver Devil will appear in your room tonight and eat the disobedient little wizard." Moment. When such a somewhat irritable rebuke came from a corner in the hall, Gringotts, which was originally busy, fell silent for an instant. Everyone's movements seemed to have pressed the pause button instantly. The goblins who were originally holding quills and writing furiously were now raising their ugly faces one by one, looking at the source of the sound with vicious and fierce eyes. "Silver Demon, where is the Silver Demon? Kill him!" Sudden roars came from the mouths of several shopkeepers' goblins. The next moment, before Harry could see clearly what happened, he was nervously pulled behind him by Hagrid. When the bursts of fierce reprimands and apologies ended, Harry emerged from Hagrid's arms and saw the family, together with a money bag, being thrown out of Gringotts by several goblins. Store. Gringotts will not provide any services to rude wizards. Finally, when Harry Potter was brought out by Hagrid after withdrawing the money from Gringotts, after looking around, he finally couldn't hold it back and asked, "Hagrid, who is the Silver Devil and why does everyone seem to be afraid of him?" Hagrid was startled. "Afraid? How did you see that? We want to tear him alive." Harry was shocked. "We? Hagrid, you mean, you also want to kill the Silver Demon? Why? Has he done anything to you?" Hagrid's expression froze, and anger rose in his eyes, but he was able to suppress it in an instant. "Okay, stop talking about these unpleasant things. Next, we are going to buy the things you need for school. After finishing all this, I will send the things back to Hogwarts as soon as possible." Ollivander's wand shop. Hermione was trying out the appropriate wand one by one under Ollivander's guidance. Romon, who transformed into Snape, was scanning a shelf in the wand shop without leaving any trace. "I have endured loneliness and devoted myself to research and study for more than 10 years. Add the buff of your own Goldfinger, Dharma Temple." Today's Romon, in addition to his potion skills that are well known to the outside world and have deep experience, alchemy is also a skill of his that is not inferior to potions. And skills like alchemy wand circuit allow him to create a wand of his own without any hindrance. However, for him now, the ordinary wand has long been meaningless. On Romon's side, he took Hermione one after another to buy almost everything, and he also thoughtfully bought a lot of magical books for the future Miss Know-It-All, and was about to return. Romon's expression changed slightly. Glancing at Hermione, who was still excited and chirping about what she was happy about today, she sensed that there were more than a dozen hidden and extremely careful things around them at the moment. But Romon still clearly sensed the malicious gaze. "It seems that the Snape from Hogwarts appeared at the same time as the Snape from my side, and was noticed by those guys." Romon paused, looked at Hermione, who raised her head in confusion, and raised the corners of his mouth in a slight arc. "Hermione, would you be interested in seeing a show? A real magic show?" Chapter 19 Romon's Magic. Magic is the art of freedom. New book. Please vote for flowers. Take Hermione out of Diagon Alley. After some wandering, I came to a deserted suburb of London. Just as Romon's footsteps stopped, there were a few clatters. More than a dozen wizards dressed in black robes, with obvious evil intentions, appeared around Romon and the others. As soon as he appeared, he was instantly surrounded by the two of them. "Silver Lord Romon Goldstein Kowalski, we know it's you. Lift your ridiculous transformation spell." With a fierce roar, Romon looked around at the wands pointing directly at him. The corners of his mouth curved. He didn't say anything, but his body suddenly twisted. The next moment, the greasy black-robed man in Hermione's eyes turned back into the handsome and noble Romon. "Although I really want to praise you for being able to find me so quickly, I must still state that my transformation spell is not ridiculous. Low-level wizards like you can do it without using Polyjuice Potion. Come on. Do you want to become someone else?" Romon said with a smile. However, at this moment, his face has hardly changed much after more than 10 years. But in an instant, the dozen or so dark wizards who came to the door were reminded of the face in the wizard's court. "Fake, you son of a bitch. I will chop you into pieces and feed you to the dogs today. I will tear you to pieces with my own hands." Looking at the dozen or so wizards around who were dressed in evil costumes and whose faces were as ugly as drug addicts, Hermione nervously shrank into Romon's arms, facing the lights that lit up more than a dozen wands. "I couldn't help but close my eyes in fear. Split into pieces. Collapse. All petrified. A series of magical rays of light instantly hit Romon. And that was this moment. Romon's sonorous voice sounded. Armor protection middle. Blessing of mountain giants. Rumble, rumble. A series of explosions, accompanied by powerful magic fluctuations, spread out around Romon with Romon as the center. The huge fluctuation caused a dozen dark wizards around to take a few steps back. Everyone looked shocked. They still know how much they weigh and how much they weigh. Even if they all chant the spell with all their strength, it is impossible to induce such a strong magic wave. And at the moment they were confused. In the center of the magic power, in the pale magic light, a terrifying earth-brown figure slowly appeared. Roar. The huge roar and strong wind once again pushed these dark wizards several meters away. As soon as everyone looked up, the magic dissipated. After the light faded, they saw the terrifying giant standing at the center of their attack, which was more than 10 meters high. The mountain-like body shape, coupled with a strong earthy smell, caused everyone's brains to shut down instantly. Waterfuck. What the hell is this? I seem to have heard him reciting the armor protection spell. It couldn't be. Don't be stupid. How could this monster be protected by armor? How could it be something created by a curse? At the same time, Hermione, who was so frightened that she huddled in Romon's arms, carefully raised her head. As soon as he opened his eyes, he was so frightened by the horrific scene in front of him that he could not speak. Romon's handsome, flawless face lowered his head, looked at the confused Hermione, and smiled. Hermione, you are a smart child and will definitely become an outstanding wizard in the future. However, there are many outstanding wizards in this world, but there are really few legends. Don't be bound by the wizarding world. Don't be bound by the spell of Hogwarts. Magic is always free. With that said, before Hermione could react, Romon had already raised his head and looked at the dark wizards around him who had come to the door regardless of life or death. The ice-cold eyes flashed away. Even though it was his bottle of potion that caused the incident, in the final analysis, he cannot bear the blame alone. These people are looking for trouble for themselves. Romon doesn't feel guilty and doesn't fight back. Now you have a chance to disappear from my eyes immediately, otherwise, you will no longer have this opportunity. However, such contemptuous words instantly made the dark wizards who were originally a little nervous become furious on the spot. Fake squid. Son of a bitch, either you die today or we die. It's all what you did back then, which caused so many deformed monsters to appear in our family. You must die today. You must be buried with our Horn family. Romon's eyes were fixed, and his brows were slightly raised. I've heard a little bit about the Horn family, but it's not that famous, and it's not a pure-blood wizard family. At most, it's just a family formed by a bunch of wandering wizards. This situation abounds in the wizarding world. However, from these guys, Romon heard some information that he was interested in. Suppressing the joy in his heart, Romon said no more. The body wrapped in the mountain giant raised a hand slightly and murmured, "Call God to protect you." The next moment, a holy thing with ripples, vaguely like an angel with wings, appeared above Romon's head, lighting up the dark suburb. It also caused Hermione to exclaim in an instant, "Mom, I saw an angel." Beautiful. However, in the eyes of these black wizards, such a move was so ridiculous. Ha, it seems that our Mr. Silver Demon has been imprisoned in Azkaban for a long time. The curse of calling the gods has no effect at all except to deal with Dementors. The black wizard hadn't finished speaking, but Romon raised his hand again. It was not clear that he had any specific magical powers at work, but the next moment, a dull rumbling sound suddenly came from the dark night sky. Next moment, boom, pale thunder suddenly appeared, and accurately struck the patron saint in midair. Thunder condenses, wraps, and deforms. Romon's voice sounded cold. Calling God Guardian, Spirit of Zeus. Chapter 20 Spirit of Zeus. The moment Romon pronounced the name of this curse, the guardian angel above his head finally became dazzling. The angel that was originally a bit blurry and unclear, like a white smoke, is now wearing a white gold armor, holding a golden spear. A pair of wings behind his back also emit golden light. Threads of thunder and lightning twined around it. Without waiting, the dark wizards either exclaimed or expressed their shock and confusion. Next moment, crack! The thunder angel pointed his spear at one of them, and a bolt of thunder exploded on him in an instant. The terrifying power roared with waves of sound. Hermione screamed in horror, only to see that the dark wizard who had been hit by the thunder was already scorched black, and with billowing smoke. He flew up and fell into the weeds not far away. Movement was lost. Grey shouts of fear and disbelief came from the mouths of the other dark wizards, and several of them rushed towards the unlucky guy named Grey at the same time. Others also waved their wands towards Romon. Ava eats the big melon. The dark green life-killing spell was shot out, and the fierce light hit the protective spell around Romon and the others, but it was not able to shake even the mountain giant. At the same time, the Thunder Angel had turned the spear again. Crack! There was another scream, and a dark wizard fell to the ground on the spot. Romon's cold voice echoed in Hermione's ears, matched with the most direct and bloody battle in front of her, for this little wizard who had just entered the wizarding world and was full of endless yearning for the wizarding world, opened up the underground world of wizards. Hermione, although in the next few years, You will basically come into contact with professors at Hogwarts and other young wizards around you, but don't underestimate the horror of the wizarding world. The cruelty and the darkness is no less than the battles in the mole world. Crack! The thunder above the head continued to bloom and roar amidst the miserable howls of the dark wizards. The dazzling white lightning reflected Romon's face, flickering in and out. The cold reality, mixed with a bloody and cruel scene in front of him, spat out from his mouth. The wizarding world is not about treating guests to dinner, it is about life and death. When the thunder dissipates, Romon dispersed the spell around him. At this moment, all the original 13 dark wizards were lying on the ground. Are they all dead? Such a question was asked from the little girl Hermione's mouth, and it was obvious that the other party tonight was destined to be uneasy. Romon put a hand on the other person's head, ravaging the thick, chipmunk-like hair on his head. Smiling. How is it possible? Even though they came to the door by themselves, and I can kill them easily, do you think Professor Romon is the kind of person who doesn't care about girls' feelings at all? I just taught them some lessons. Even though it's miserable now, they will recover after a while. When Hermione heard this, she breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time, a blush suddenly appeared on her face. He raised his head and looked at Romon, whose eyes were filled with adoration. Professor Romon, are those spells you used just now? Can I learn them at Hogwarts too? Romon smiled and stroked the other's head. I'm at Hogwarts. Of course you can learn it, but Hermione, this is not easy. This is a very advanced spell. Hearing this, Hermione made a small pink fist without hesitation. I'm not afraid. I've been studying since I was a child. Professor Romon, I will definitely work hard to become the legendary wizard you call me. Romon nodded and pulled the other person towards their home. The legendary wizard. If it's Miss Know-It-All, it should be no problem, right? Romon was inexplicably looking forward to it. No doubt. Hermione couldn't calm down at all after returning from Diagon Alley. There is still some time before Hogwarts starts school on September 1st. At the invitation of Granger and his wife, Romon thought about it and stayed at Granger's house. Anyway, when he goes back to Hogwarts now, there will definitely be a lot of trouble waiting for him. Quiet night. Romon lay on the bed and waited for a long time. He sensed that Hermione was in the room, tirelessly holding a copy of the history of Hogwarts and reading it endlessly. Romon couldn't help but shook his head and murmured softly. Go to sleep. A sleeping spell, silent and undetected by the Ministry of Magic, was released by Romon. In just a few breaths, the little Lily was already lying on the bed and sleeping gently. And at this moment, Romon's wrist, Elizabeth, who had not appeared yet, seemed to have been prepared. Flew out. Oh no. Romon nodded, with a cold and indifferent look in his eyes. They all have the magic marks I set on them. Find them and bring back what I want. Don't expose them. Immediately, Elizabeth took the lead. Dexterous as a ribbon fluttering in the air, it flew out of the window and instantly turned into a bolt of lightning, disappearing into the night sky. Spare the enemy? Sorry, Romon doesn't have this habit. If so, I can only say that this is called taking a long-term approach to catch big fish. In the British wizarding world, in a quiet valley manor, in the slightly desolate manor, more than a dozen black wizards appeared in a flash, and they all lay on the ground in confusion. He grimaced in pain. FK. Why has no one ever said that the Silver Devil is so strong? He was imprisoned in Azkaban for 13 years and he was not destroyed. Chapter 21. The product of the extreme Silver Knight. Please give me your votes for the new book 13 Years in Azkaban. To be honest, as dark wizards, they have at least dealt with Dementors. Although not everyone is unlucky enough to be kissed by that thing, they are also very aware of that disgusting undead magical creature. Let alone 13 years, let them stay together with that kind of thing. You can torture them for a year. Not to mention that Azkaban itself has various formations to suppress the magic power of dark wizards. 13 years of imprisonment, let alone any increase in strength. If you can still cast magic after coming out, you will be a top group of wizards. However, they could not figure out how Romon, a guy who was imprisoned in Azkaban when he was in the 6th grade at Hogwarts, could have such terrifying strength. Damn it, I've never heard of those strange spells. How can armor protect you so well? To hell with that armor protection thing. Except that boy has recited a spell for armor protection. Look at the appearance of that mountain giant. How can there be any effect of armor protection? Oh. Fake. It hurts me so much. That damn god-calling guard. Hiss. The 13 dark wizards of the Horn family either cursed angrily or gasped, all made extremely uncomfortable by tonight's actions. If that kid hadn't been a young boy, he wouldn't have known how to eradicate it. I'm afraid they won't be able to come back today. And on their side, they helped each other stand up and walk towards the manor. More than a dozen house elves came up to welcome their master back. Either bring it to a wound, or bring a clean towel and water. Looking down at these people washing up, one of the house elves hesitated, but spoke carefully. Master, the life medicines for the little masters at home are not enough. Crack. It was like being stepped on suddenly. The boss of the Horn family, who had just sat down to let the elves around him give medicine, stood up instantly angrily. He waved his staff in his hand. The next moment, the talking house elf flew out on the spot. The screams frightened the surrounding house elves to tremble. Fuck. Who cares about those monsters? Let them die. How could I, Johnny Horn, have such a dirty and evil offspring? How is it possible? The roar echoed in the manor, but what they didn't know at this moment was that it was above the sky. In the pitch-black night, a terrifying colossus, hidden in the dark clouds, had already arrived above their heads, bringing them a catastrophe. Boss, forget it, it's all caused by that damn Silver Demon King. If it wasn't for that extreme Silver Knight, how could we all be destroyed? Otherwise, we would have crushed all those damn evil bastards to death. Yes, Johnny, don't be angry. The first thing we have to do now is to tell others that the Silver Devil is not as easy to deal with as you think. Just when several other members of the Horn family spoke to persuade them, suddenly, the wind in the air began to increase gradually. When everyone realized that something was wrong, a terrifying pitch-black tornado that pierced into the sky took shape. It encompasses the entire estate. A series of house elves were caught off guard and were swept away on the spot. His body was still in midair when he was hit by a sudden dark red thunder. Under the gaze of everyone on the spot, it turned into a handful of coke, and then dissipated in the air. Fuck. What the hell is going on? Quickly change shape. Withdraw. Someone is attacking us. Damn it. Could it be the Silver Demon King? I can't control that much anymore. Run. Just when several people were frightened and wanted to use Operation, the next moment, terrifying wind blades suddenly appeared. Several people who were already injured had no time to react. The next moment, they were all hanged on the spot with their eyes open. The flesh and blood scattered on the ground caused the house elves to roar in fear, but what they responded to was the dark red thunder that almost engulfed them. Wait until everything stops. When Elizabeth came to this devastated manor, both the dark wizards from the Horn family and the house elves had already disappeared. The wind blades cut their bodies, the thunder smashed them into pieces, and the powerful tornado rolled them everywhere. Ho ho ho, the capable Elizabeth, the master's favorite. Elizabeth hummed an off-key tune. Powerful magic waves radiated out, and she found what Romon needed in an instant. In a dark basement, 4 children lying on the bed, their bodies exuding the smell of various strange medicines, barely able to be called human beings, came into view. Elizabeth spat out the snake letter. I found you, cutie. When Romon sensed Elizabeth's return, it was already late at night. The figure flashed, disappeared from Granger's house, and reappeared in the wilderness of the suburbs. In a woods, Romon saw Elizabeth and the 4 deformed children she brought back, the products of the Silver Knight. Looking at the 4 painful and twisted things, Romon's eyes remained calm. No guilt at all. After all, in the final analysis, the accident was not caused by himself. The fluctuations in magic power are already quite strong. He is 13 years old. To be able to suppress the magic power for such a long time without going berserk. The Horn family has really invested a lot of money. Romon shook his head sarcastically. But it just so happens that there is nothing more likely to give birth to an obscurant that satisfies him than such a little wizard. He took out the space-folding suitcase that he had prepared a long time ago and put these abnormal products into it. Wonderful night. Hermione saw the wizarding world, and dreamed of becoming the legendary wizard. Romon said. As for Romon, he did not sleep. A pillow in the outside world turned him into a sound sleep. He had already started busy work in the space-folding box. What a harvest day. At the same time, in Horn Manor, one after another figures appeared one after another through transformation. My Lord Merlin... Has this place been trampled collectively by giant dragons? Chapter 22 Professor Dumbledore, Hogwarts is really good at cultivating demon kings. Even if there was turmoil from here, the Ministry of Magic sensed something was wrong and ordered their nearest Auror to come. About an hour has passed. But when these Aurors arrived at the scene, they were still shocked and speechless by the scene before them. The former Horn Manor has been razed to the ground, leaving only a few ruins still standing with difficulty. Together with the rubble and ruins on the ground, it tells the fact that there once was a manor here. Small tornadoes are still here, like wandering souls, moving around in disorder. The gravel is rolled up, and the gravel falls again. Captain Frank, this is not like a battle between wizards, something that can be caused. Flack, the top captain of the British Ministry of Magic, glared angrily at his subordinate who came to report. Isn't this nonsense? This is obviously a means to destroy a manor. Could it be caused by an ordinary wizard? Do you think everyone is a Dumbledore? Taking a deep breath, Frank calmed himself down. There have been too many things going on in the British wizarding world recently, one after another. First, the Silver Devil was released from prison, triggering a mad pursuit by almost all British wizards. Then came Hogwarts and Minister of Magic Fudge, the dead Silver Devil. I heard that the Ministry of Magic in the United States seems to be making some moves recently. Another big thing happened here today. The entire wizard family was wiped out. Even if it was just a small family, there were more than a dozen adult wizards, and they were all dark wizards with ruthless methods and even evil deeds. Such a force was wiped out in such a desperate way. Even though Frank, the Auror captain, had seen too many cruel things, he couldn't help but feel nervous at this moment. As he was talking, another figure suddenly appeared here. Mr. Minister. Seeing Fudge himself, even though Frank was dissatisfied with the other party's forceful release of the Silver Devil, at this moment, on the surface, he was not as rude as others. Say hello to your luggage respectfully. Fudge nodded and took a breath looking at the ruins in front of him. The small tornadoes that were still circling made him think of something for a moment, and he couldn't help but look to the side. Dumbledore, who arrived with him, Professor Dumbledore, what kind of spell do you think caused a scene like this? Such a large scale, seemingly one-time destruction. There are only a handful of people in the entire wizarding world who can do it. Countable. Dumbledore glanced at the other person. One glance revealed a glimmer of information in this old fox's eyes. Obviously, the other party saw something, just didn't say it clearly. But yes, this minister was also present when Romon was released from Azkaban. The one that Romon had at that time looked like it was caused by a magical creature like a bird or a snake. Isn't it very similar to everything in front of me? Think again of what happened to the Horn family on the Silver Night. The two old foxes exchanged glances calmly, briefly reaching some kind of consensus. Everyone saw Dumbledore nodding. But then he shook his head again. Indeed, what Mr. Minister said is indeed true. However, a person who can cast a spell of this level must either have an absolute alibi, or have already died. So, personally, I can only consider the failure of alchemy for the time being. His remarks made everyone present frown, but Fudge nodded in agreement, and as the Minister of Magic, he directly set the tone for this matter. After exchanging a few words with the Aurors who were obviously dissatisfied with him, Fudge took Dumbledore and hurriedly left the scene. A secret corner. After confirming that no one was following him, Fudge finally couldn't bear it anymore. Dumbledore, you promised me that he must stay in Hogwarts, not even through the gate, or let him go back to the wizarding world of America immediately. Merlin, the Horn family is just a small and inconspicuous family, but how many other wizard families are there who want to kill that guy? Do you want him to destroy all these wizard families? Dumbledore was also in trouble at the moment and couldn't tell. Although he had thought that Romon would definitely be uneasy, he did not expect that the first thing he would do would be to destroy a small wizard family. Fortunately, no evidence was left behind in this matter, otherwise it would be really difficult to deal with. Mr. Minister, this matter was my negligence, but Romon has always been very careful in his work. You don't need to be so angry. You have seen the situation just now. Your subordinates are quite dissatisfied with you. Fudge stared and gritted his teeth. Isn't that thanks to your damn Hogwarts? I have to say, Professor Dumbledore, Hogwarts really deserves to be the most famous magic school in the wizarding world. It is really good at cultivating characters like demon kings. Before the mystery man has not, it's clearly over, and now there's a silver demon king who's even more difficult to control. God, why did I become this damn minister at this time? Fudge cursed, but Dumbledore didn't stop him. When the other party was done venting, he spoke again. Fudge, the U.S. Ministry of Magic has confirmed the visiting team. This time it is for Romon. If you want, maybe they have a way to extradite that child back to the U.S. Ministry of Magic, but I don't recommend it. You do it. Fudge remained silent, waiting for Dumbledore's explanation. There is a saying in the mysterious East, you have to tie the belt and untie the bell. What happened in the Silver Night has already happened, and Romon cannot be detained by the British Ministry of Magic, so why don't we consider letting that child Romon? How about making up for everything that was caused back then? You know that at a young age, he has already researched the potion to solve the squib problem. If he is given time and support, it is not impossible to solve the things about those deformed little wizards. Fudge was silent. After thinking about it for a long time, he seemed to think of something again. Eyes widened. Fuck. Dumbledore, you bastard. According to what you said, as the Minister of Magic, after I forcefully released the Silver Demon King, I still have to give that guy the Order of Merlin. I made this decision today. Those Aurors under me will not let me live to see the sun the next day. They will definitely entertain me with the unforgivable curse. Dumbledore looked at the other party with a feigned look. But if it succeeds, our Minister Fudge will not only become the first hero to contain the possible outbreak of war, but also bring a world-leading top potion master to the British wizarding world. Fudge. Chapter 23, Magic Factor, and the Obscurial. New book. Please vote for flowers. At the moment Romon doesn't know. I had been sold once again by Dumbledore's old glass without knowing it. After all, the history of the British wizarding world is here, and naturally it cannot be compared with the relocated households in the American wizarding world, although the gap between the two has gradually narrowed over the years. Dumbledore still saw through Romon at a glance and preferred to stay, or rather live temporarily, in the British wizarding world, and in this case, extract certain benefits from Romon. That is naturally what Dumbledore, an old man, has to consider. After all, the Savior Plan has been officially launched. In order to prevent Romon from becoming the biggest obstacle to this plan, Romon must also join in the execution of this plan and become Dumbledore's pawn. However, even Romon knew what Dumbledore was thinking. In fact, at most, he responded with a disdainful sneer. Dumbledore has the strength of Grindelwald, but unfortunately he does not have the other's ambition to conquer the wizarding world, plus the limitations of his own world on his vision. After there is no new way to improve the strength, the so-called Savior Plan can be said to be everything to the other party. Not so with Romon, however. Space to fold in a suitcase. Even though it looks like the inside of a box, there is a lot of space inside, and it is divided into different areas by Romon. There is a medicine park for growing magic potions, a breeding area for free-range magic creatures that need to be used, and a medicine area and a magic test area that Romon needs, etc. The area where Romon is now is newly divided. The area he named the Obscure. And what is locked up here are the 4 magically deformed children brought back from the Horn family by Elizabeth, He is about 13 years old, but due to deformity, he is curled up like a large silkworm chrysalis. Under his pale skin, clear blood vessels can be seen. Buzz buzz, a blood sample detection machine modified by Romon's alchemy was in operation. After a while, when Romon saw the file data in his hand, even a knowledgeable person like him was surprised. They couldn't help but take a deep breath at the physical condition of the 4 deformed children. The blood magic factor content of Obscurus number 1, 49.7%. The blood magic factor content of Obscurus number 2, 48.2%. The blood magic factor content of Obscurus number 3, 52.1%. The blood magic factor content of Obscurant number 4, 47.7%. 4 pieces of data. Few people in the wizarding world except Romon can understand them. However, he seemed to have seen a ghost, staring blankly at the 4 abnormal monsters that were constantly squirming in front of him. Magic factor, a substance named by Romon, found in the bodies of magical creatures and wizards, that can produce and attract trace amounts of magic from the outside world. It can be said that the more magic factors a person has in his body, the more likely he is to become an excellent wizard. Ordinary mugs also have this kind of thing in their bodies, but the content is very low. At most, it can only allow them to perform various fantastic behaviors in their dreams when they dream at night. However, even so, the higher the data, the better. Romon has never seen anyone, especially an underage wizard, with a magic factor exceeding 20%. Back then, even before he completed his own transformation, his magic factor was only less than 25%. I really don't know what those guys from the Horn family have done in this matter. They were able to suppress it for so long without losing control silently. Romon threw the data aside, as if looking at each treasure, and looked at the 4 obscurants in front of him. That's right. Under Romon's detection, Obscurus had already been born in the bodies of these 4 deformed children. But it was still in a stage of explosion, but not yet. Thinking of Moran's almost immortal power and destructive power in the original work, Romon couldn't help but have a flash of fire in his eyes. This kind of terrifying power, in his own hands, coupled with the knowledge and assistance of Dharma Temple, will definitely be able to bloom even more terrifying power. Romon is staying at Granger's house temporarily. In addition to teaching Miss Know-It-All some common sense about wizards, I devote myself to research every day. 4 or 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Research on the essence of out-of-control silence, 89.9% completed. Closing his eyes and entering the Dharma Temple, looking at a research project on his synthesis formula that was becoming more complete, the corners of Romon's mouth could not help but slightly rise. The Obscurus number 3 has clearly reached its limit, and the magic factor content in his blood has also reached its peak. It seems that it is time to prepare for the final step. Just when Romon's consciousness had just withdrawn from the Dharma Temple, a gentle tapping sound came from the window. When he opened his eyes, he saw a big fiery red bird with a letter in its mouth, standing at the window and staring at him. What the hell? Is this the phoenix from Old Glass? Romon's eyes widened, although Romon really didn't agree with the phoenix in front of him. However, it is undeniable that under the rules of this world, this thing that looks like a flamingo has the power of nirvana like a phoenix. Open the window and take the letter from Fox. Romon's eyes moved, and a hand popped out instantly. However, it still caught an empty space in an instant. Seeing Fox flying in midair with flames still appearing on his angry body, Romon withdrew his hand embarrassingly. Open the letter. The letter was written by Dumbledore, but it did not directly say anything was going on. Instead, it gave Romon an address and asked him to go there immediately to meet him. Romon shook his head speechlessly. Although I am going to conduct silent final research right now, in order not to be disturbed in the future progress, and to see if I can get some wool. In the end, he silently pinched his nose and admitted, in the wizarding world, in a seemingly inconspicuous tavern. When Romon arrived, he found out not only Dumbledore himself was waiting for him, but also the Minister of Magic Fudge whom he had just met a while ago. Minister Fudge, I am relieved to see that you are still so healthy. Sure enough, good people should live long. Looking at Romon who was sitting across from them with a smile on his face, Fudge was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Hello, Uncle. Damn it, a run-down rogue from America. Although Romon was already scolding bloody in his heart, when Romon asked about today's events, Fudge still honestly stated his purpose. Mr. Romon, we have thought of a way that you can stay in the British wizarding world without worrying about being hunted down in the future. If you are willing to use your outstanding potion science skills to research some potions that will benefit the public to make up for the mistakes of the Silver Knight, we can also make the wizards less hostile to you. Chapter 24 Romon, do you want to make amends with me, the Silver Devil? Didn't wake up. New book asking for flower review votes. Romon looked in front of him with a smile on his face, as if Mr. Fudge had made great efforts. He looked to the side again, smiling the same way and nodding slightly at himself, as if encouraging himself to take on the responsibilities he should shoulder. In just a moment, a speechless expression was written on his face. So, I can understand that this is the plan to turn me from a prisoner to a slave? How about I get myself another collar or something, like those house elves at Hogwarts? Romon's tone was quite cold, and there were faint magic waves emanating from his body. In an instant, Fudge, who was sitting directly opposite him, had a horrified expression on his face. He looked at Dumbledore aside with horrified eyes, almost instinctively wanting to question him loudly. "Are you sure that the guy sitting in front of you is the kid we brought out of Azkaban a few days ago? Why does the magic power emanating from this guy make me feel like I'm facing a dragon?" If Romon heard Fudge's thoughts at this moment, he would definitely laugh 3 times. "Comparing yourself with a giant dragon? If it were a dragon from another world, Romon might be more cautious. But those western lizards in this world, Romon really didn't pay attention to them. Not to mention him, even Elizabeth hovering on his wrist can easily deal with a group of giant dragons." Dumbledore raised his hand to signal Fudge not to panic. "Romon, you don't have to react so fiercely. If you do something wrong, you will naturally need to bear the responsibility." However, before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Romon waving his hand. "Professor Dumbledore, I would like to correct you on one point. You're obviously talking idealism to me, but unfortunately, I'm a very realistic person, as you can tell from my godfather. Everyone makes mistakes, I don't deny that, but..." Romon leaned forward slightly, his amber pupils exuding a powerful aura that made people breathless. The whole person looked like a prostrate tiger ready to pounce. "The strong make mistakes and the weak bear it. The weak make mistakes and bear their own responsibility." Romon spread his hand slightly, with undisguised arrogance on his lips. "I'm sorry, I may have to bear the responsibility a few days ago, but now I am not a weakling." Dumbledore was also stunned by Romon's terrible remarks and was speechless for a long time. He stared at Romon for a long time, but did not find any meaningful flaws from him. Today, Romon is a genuine top wizard who can stand in front of him and challenge him. In the end, Dumbledore could only sigh helplessly and shook his head. "You are better than I thought. Even that person can't compare to you." Fudge was not interested in giving any verbal praise to Romon here. "Look eager. So, what do you have to do to help quell the anger of the wizards?" "Now the entire Ministry of Magic has a problem even running." Snapped. Romon snapped his fingers. His eyes finally became less aggressive, and he gave Minister Fudge an appreciative smile in front of him. "I like Mr. Minister's words very much, especially the help. Of course, I am a future professor of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry who was pardoned and released, and an international friend from the United States Department of Magic. Why should I bear the responsibility for the mistakes made by the Silver Demon King?" Fudge, Dumbledore, young, strong, and without any shame. Once such a guy grows up in the future, who can compete with him? Wrong. The two looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. The boy in front of him has obviously grown up. Although I haven't seen the opponent's specific combat power, everything revealed now has been made clear. The Silver Demon King is also the real Demon King. He was called the Demon King not because of his terrible destructive power, but because of his own strength. But fortunately, this guy is still willing to sit at the negotiating table, unlike the previous 2 generations of crazy Dark Lords. "Tell me what you think, Mr. Romon. If your matter is not resolved, I think that even when the school starts, very few wizards will be allowed to return to school." The corners of Romon's mouth curled up slightly. "It's not that I can't research potions that improve the wizarding world, and even cure those deformed children. But you can't let me contribute for nothing, can you?" In an instant, Fudge and Dumbledore understood instantly. Rip off. Romon's purpose is already quite obvious, combined with the other party's identity and information. Whether it's alchemy, research on magical creatures, or research on potions, they are all big, money-burning projects. Ordinary wizards are already very strapped to maintain one item alone. For a company like Romon that blooms like 100 flowers, the hole in funds and resources is definitely not small. However, just when they thought it was that simple, the next moment Romon's lips curled up slightly. He said something that made the expressions of both people present change. "I will take out my potion authorization when the people from the U.S. Ministry of Magic come. At that time, whichever potion authorization is obtained by the other side will not be able to prepare this potion." Look at the unabashed cunning on Romon's face. Dumbledore and Fudge's hands under the table could not help but tremble slightly. Is there a real devil living inside this guy? Almost all of the magic potions that Romon made were not the ordinary magic potions on the market, such as the elixir of good fortune. No matter in terms of function or effect, they are all outstanding. And if in this case, the United States Ministry of Magic is also brought in, it will still be incompatible between the two parties. Mr. Romon, I need to remind you that if you do this, you will enclose yourself between the American wizarding world and the British wizarding world. If one fails, no one can save you. Dumbledore spoke solemnly. Romon's lips curled up slightly. Not only did he not have a trace of fear, but he was full of expectation. "Professor Dumbledore, do you know that when life gets longer, something becomes harder?" The two were puzzled. "Romon, have fun. I need to make the world more interesting so that my life can be more colorful." Chapter 25. Someone from the American wizarding world is coming. The Addams Family. New book asking for flower review votes. Good news, Romon is willing to cooperate with them to reduce the anger of wizards in the British wizarding world. The bad news, high-priced services. Romon didn't know what Dumbledore's reaction would be after they returned. Anyway, he was in a pretty good mood. "Romon, Why do you have to remember so many details about using a wand when you can cast such a powerful spell without a wand? Regarding the title of Romon, Hermione also gradually relaxed during this period of getting along. It became a lot more casual, and the two of them were like ordinary friends, or brothers and sisters. This kind of question was what Hermione asked the most during this period. In the garden outside Granger's house, Romon was lying lazily on a chair, with a copy of today's London newspaper covering his face. Even as a wizard, but as a time traveler, the father of this world is still a mole. Romon has no interest in completely giving up mole happiness for the wizarding world. He also always pays attention to newspapers and current affairs. When I encounter something worthy of investment in my previous life, I don't mind taking a handful from it. Hearing Hermione's question, Romon opened his slightly narrowed eyes. Looking at the other party, one can already feel a little unfamiliar, letting a feather float gently. This is the effect of the levitation spell. That's right, Hermione, as I said, you are a genius wizard. You were in the same class as me. Oh, yes, you should know that the father of the savior Harry Potter, James, spent a full 3 days' time. Oh stupid James Potter. Hearing Romon's sarcastic sigh, Hermione's face swelled. But then she asked curiously, what about you Romon? How long did it take you to learn the levitation spell? As he spoke, he waved the wand in his hand slightly, and the feathers began to fly again unscrupulously. With Romon, a top alchemist, the trace in the wand could not affect Hermione at this moment. Looking at Hermione who looked expectant, Uhu spoke. Stupid James Potter doesn't admit his stupidity. Out of good intentions, I let his head and the classroom ceiling have an intimate kiss. It didn't take long. Just for a moment. Looking at Romon who was talking about old things with a bored expression, Hermione felt inexplicably sympathetic to the father named Harry Potter. I'm not a genius. If I were a genius, then who would you be, Romon? Romon covered his head with newspapers again, and the sound of raging was heard. Maybe God is my biological son. Hermione was speechless. However, Romon was truly speechless at this moment. My mind is filled with what happened in the Obscurus area last night. There was no outbreak. Why wasn't there an outbreak? The magic factor has obviously been raised to the limit. Just last night, he was thinking about it, and in his calculations, it was clear that the Obscurus was going to break out on the third night, but the other party didn't react at all. This disappointed Romon, who had already prepared to collect wild Obscuras. But I still can't figure it out. Early in the morning, I lay down on the chair decadently. Squeak. Just when Romon was frowning and thinking, the sound of a car braking suddenly came. A slightly low but mature female voice sounded. Mr. Romon Kowalski, I'm sorry to disturb your morning rest at this time. Romon looked up and opened his eyes. When he saw everything that came into view, he couldn't help but look stunned. A dark old car parked in front of Granger's house, and a group of people got out of it. Uniform black-toned clothing, elegant women wearing slim and luxurious long skirts, and men all wearing suits and leather shoes. And Romon's eyes were immediately fixed on a little Lily among the people. Wednesday. Mr. Adams, Mrs. Adams, why are you here? The Adams family. In the past few years, I had been imprisoned in Azkaban, spending all my time researching and studying every day, and things had not stopped since I came out. So much so that he even forgot about his friends in the American wizarding world. A past life that does not exist in the Harry Potter world, but is also a family from a fantasy show. Haha, okay. Put down the shovel in your hand. Your friend Romon has not forgotten you. On Wednesday, I think you can continue to maintain your daily goal of burying your brother alive. Elegant Mrs. Adams. Morticia gently threw aside the shovel behind her little gothic Lolita. The sound of the shovel hitting the ground caused Hermione's body to tremble in fear. But Romon seemed to have been used to it for a long time, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He looked at the little gothic Lolita who came in front of him with his upper body motionless, like a stiff robot, with a face. Before Romon said anything, the other party glanced at Hermione aside. If you dare to get close to my fiancé again, I will kill you. Her calm words made Hermione receive her first death threat in her life. The latter was so frightened that she backed away. If Romon hadn't pulled the little goth girl aside, she might have scared Hermione to tears. Romon smiled bitterly. Mrs. Adams, I mean, aren't you over there in the American wizarding world? Why are you here in London? And the whole family is here, even bringing little things. As she spoke, Hermione let out a high-pitched scream as if she had seen something terrible. On Mr. Adams's shoulder, a severed hand that seemed alive and thinking jumped to the ground. While moving his fingers, he nimbly took a few steps towards Romon, and even extended his hand to say hello. Hermione's reaction even more aroused the disdain of the little goth girl behind Romon. Well, it seems that I was overly worried. With your excellent genes, you will definitely look down on such a fool from the countryside. Even small things can scare her into being like this. Unable to accomplish big things. Romon. This is a normal reaction for a normal person to see a moving severed hand, right? Immediately, Romon seemed to have thought of something and looked surprised. Mr. Adams, could it be that a representative from the American wizarding community is here?